Hey, Bill.
Hey, how's it going, Greg?
Good. How about you?
All right, where'd you go now? I lost you.
Yeah.
What the hell? Oh, there you are. Oh, there we go. So,
Glad. How did you manage to get the day off? I thought you were usually working on Mondays.
I am.
Oh, so
I
you're
just
working
finished.
out.
I started early.
That's great.
Yeah, so I had some free time now.
Good to
So,
hear.
how was your weekend go?
That was good. We just bought a new house, so it's all doing stuff. We built a raised bed for flowers and herbs and stuff. And what else? We did a lot of stuff. Actually, it was a very busy weekend. How about you? How was your weekend?
It was nice. I was busy too. I'm busy building a website for somebody else.
Oh, cool.
That was fun. Getting that all together, getting all the
What are you
text
using?
ready. Hmm?
What are you using to build the site?
Because they had me. Because right now I'm consulting, but they had me working for uh, the Abazook I was telling you about, that $1 billion raffle a while
Yeah,
back. That I think is a good spot to have UBsports involved in.
yeah.
Because they'd be good sponsors or even good influencers to get more recognition across the world. So, but my job is to build a marketing platform for them.
Cool.
I'm putting it together, writing all the text for it and everything else. I already have like 4 pages, so this
Yeah,
of a website. So that and I started some garden work too.
yeah.
I got to get all the junk out of there, and I have 5 raised beds that I built. I had 10 of them. I got rid of 5 last year, so I have 5 now. So,
Wow. What are you planting them?
well, originally with the 10 of them, we had a whole garden with everything, but we were feeding all the animals. We weren't feeding ourselves.
Wow.
So my wife said, get rid of some of them. So I got rid of 5 of them. Now we're gonna put flowers, all like wildflowers in one of them,
Right.
maybe in a beautiful tree in the middle of one of the other, and then some herbs in the other 2.
Nice.
So it'll look nice. So
That's
I
cool.
I'm doing a lot of changing in my sprinkler systems too. Because I had the garden set up with these big, really high sprinklers that can do the whole garden.
Right.
Now there's no garden, so I got to bring them the lower ones.
That's cool. Well, our house is on a small piece of property. It's in a regular neighborhood, and so there's really not that much room. But we managed to build a bed so it's nice and tight. But it's like even we're figuring out we might need like 2 sprinklers for the whole place. So yeah, so it's gonna be pretty easy. We don't even know if we should get build them in or just have regular sprinklers with hoses.
Have a guy come by and give you an estimate. And they'll
Yeah,
tell you how many you might need. They say you may need 4. If you need 4, okay, then I'll do it.
yeah, that's reasonable.
2 for front, 2 for back, or like whatever to cover both the sides.
Yeah.
Where are you now? You're in Long Island. What part?
No, actually, my girlfriend's up in New Haven,
Oh,
and
you're in Connecticut.
yeah, we just bought a house north of New Haven. So
Ah,
yeah, just like about 10 minutes away from the middle of New Haven. It's nice. These
nice.
these cities down up here rather are, the biggest city is Hartford, and you can get through that in about 20 minutes, 25
Oh, wow.
minutes.
Well,
Not
then
like
you
Manhattan.
want it.
It's not anything like Manhattan.
I know it really isn't. I know. I have friends that live in Danbury. One lives in Hartford, and I think Manchester's the name of one.
Yeah,
Right?
there's one of those.
Manchester up there. So I know a lot of the areas, and one of them I don't even know where he lives. I think close to New Haven area, but I'm not too sure what town it is.
Yeah, so they're quote unquote cities, but you drive through them and no problems. Like,
Oh,
um,
to me they're little villages.
yeah, they are in Stamford, which is the second largest city in Connecticut. You literally can get through in 10 minutes, right through the middle of town.
It's
It's
like
really,
going through Brooklyn.
yeah, it
That's
is.
it.
Like, boom, you're done. No, Brooklyn's really hard to get through. It's even on the highway, the Brooklyn Queens Expressway, it's still forever to
Yeah,
get through it.
yeah.
But, so yeah, it's tough, but I think it's just gonna be you, me, Dania, and John. Kelly's on vacation, and so it's just us.
Okay.
How'd the call last week go?
Last week it was just how'd it
That's
go?
great.
It was pretty
You,
much
John, and I.
John and I spent like 2 hours on Friday working on some stuff.
Okay,
that had to be
cool.
taken care of, and that was like the bulk of the work that we were doing together last week.
I sent my list did you see the list as well? I sent it to John to put a list to add to the list, his program that he's
Yeah.
building.
Now, one of the biggest things we're toying with, I don't know where John is, but the biggest thing we were talking about was like when we find out what sports somebody likes. You know, John was thinking push it off until the second or third page, and I'm like, I want to find out what sports they like immediately because that's how we can get back to them. When we get the email address, that email becomes valuable when we know what sports they like.
Yeah, but I agree, and I think that's the only thing you really need up front right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the other parts are really good, but that's something we can add to as we go along.
Right. And we don't really need to know as the person's using the site, you know, their functional enjoyment of the site is really going to come from what sports they're watching, what videos they're watching, what pro is saying, what you know, Olympic athletes saying what. That's what the fun part of the site. When you start talking about what stats, you know, my football stats or my basketball stats or my tennis stats, now you're getting into something that, first of all, not too many people are going to fill out
Right.
real unless they're being recruited or they want to be recruited or they want to like brag about how good they are.
Exactly.
Yeah, or they don't even know.
Yeah.
They're playing, I don't know.
Yeah. What's your leg press, Bill? How high can you jump? You know, those kind of things are, you know, they're for people who care and who want to compete against other people for either recruitment or just because they want to compete against somebody else.
Which I think would be a good plus for us. It's a big part of us as well. But that's something we can build upon.
Right. Exactly. And functionally, really, we're not going to have a recruiting portal for another couple months anyway. So for all those other, it's a good, to me, I look at those as a good reason to tag back to somebody that's going to make them want to come back to the site if they haven't been regularly using it. Same thing, like if we add a new sport portal for a sport they said they liked, but we didn't have at the time, or we get a new Olympic athlete to be involved. That gives us a chance to reach back and get them something that's actionable that's going to pull them back in.
Right.
So we need to know what sports they play.
Right. Or contact saying in there, if you don't see the sport you like, please let us know. Contact us here.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Without adding more, we at least make communication.
Right. Right. So all those things are touch points for us to reach back and grab them and give them something actionable. So I'm all for that kind of stuff. And that was our debate on, I think, last week and then the week before. Is like, you know, where do we stop? You know that John had that blue box with what sports you like.
Yeah.
And then like in order to get there, you had to go through a couple of things, and you got there, and then you know by that time we were already 3 pages in.
Right.
So I think it's just a matter of where we put that blue box. I mean, I want to move it up so that as soon as you find out about that, you can join the site, and you go to join the site, we're asking them what sports you like.
Right.
And
I definitely believe that should be the first and foremost information we gather, because they're actually coming to UBsports because they want to, you know, be involved with a sport, you know. So that's the main attraction right there. That's the main draw.
Yeah.
Also, it's attention span. Everybody forgets attention spans of people. You know, most people have an 8-second attention span. It's literally that's what they have.
Yeah.
You want to make sure their attention is good enough for what they're looking for, so they want to stay longer. Once they stay longer enjoying, okay, now they may be more serious and they can see other features that we have and apply that to those features what they want.
Right. And there are a lot of places where we can ask them join. You know, we can say during their visit, we can have join because this is what you're going to get, or see more videos if you join. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, our job is to build membership that wants to come back and that are members.
Yeah.
That's
you want to make a little family out of the group.
Yeah, and the value is very big per member, and not so much per viewer, but you know, obviously if we have unique visits, that's really important. But also to have membership that we can say this is their emails, because the emails are valuable. As soon as we have an email and what their interests are, they're very valuable to us. But when you go to sell the company, and you know, that's where the value comes in. We have 3 million members. With the 3 million members, we're worth $500 million.
Right.
So, and 3 million, if you think about Instagram, they have 3 billion members.
Yeah.
And Facebook. So, if we get anywhere past 3 million, we're going to make a lot of money on this.
Yeah.
So, I think we have to keep in mind where the value comes, and is it going to be in those few people who decide to get recruited through UB Sports, or is it going to be in the 100 times more people who want to just see the greatest video in their sport or in all sports?
Yeah, I think that recruitment aspect, I don't know, you can correct me wrong, Daniel, would be actually very good for us, for our company, because it'll be good for all the colleges, all the pros, actually looking for people instead of having to travel around, look around, and get the scouts everywhere to look for stuff.
Right.
They have a means to look for something and not to go crazy.
Oh, that's critical. And
I think that's big for them. That makes us more unique than anything else.
Daniel, how much would you charge? I mean, how much would you pay as a college coach or a scout? How much would you pay per month to get views of a population that has, the kind of athletes you're looking for?
We probably would pay yearly subscriptions for those type of recruiting software and apps.
Right.
It's not a monthly thing. It's more of a yearly subscription that includes everything. Information, film, whatever you need to know about that recruit. But it's yearly. It's not monthly subscriptions.
So is that $1,000, or what would you pay?
I'm trying to think. I would say like $2,500 maybe. Yeah, $2,500, $1,500 to $2,500 depending on how detailed the subscription. The subscription is, the software is.
So if you're going to do like a trial subscription for us, right, as we're starting, we really can't be valuable to somebody so that they'll pay money until we have how many people playing basketball?
Yeah, that's probably, I would say you need quite a bit. And it's got to be, I would think for colleges, for teams, for basketball teams, the recruiting app and the recruiting, the recruiting opportunities is probably what's going to drive colleges to subscribe. It's not going to be just the other, reading information about the sport or just seeing who's involved in basketball in general in terms of the numbers. I think the numbers that you have to really build would be the numbers of student athletes who want to be considered recruitable. Once that is identified and your numbers are high there and only there, that's when I think coaches will be more interested in UB Sports. They're not going to join UB Sports as a coach. They're probably join as a fan or whatever, but not as a coach until that recruiting numbers are up, and it's got to be way up.
Yeah,
so that's why I said it was important for us to identify early what athletes want to be considered recruitable, because we could watch that number grow just based on early subscriptions. You know what I mean? Right. And if it's not growing based on early subscriptions, now we have to really target or change some things to get more recruitable athletes to sign up. So that little checkbox right there, do you consider yourself recruitable or not, is going to be how we generate that sort of income from colleges. They're not going to join UB Sports just to read someone's profile. That's not even recruitable.
So the most efficient way, we have to figure out a way to get efficiently into that population. So it's either going to be finding reasons for high schools to join and bring their kids on, or do serious marketing into Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and those kind of guys, right?
I do think allowing your members to know that either now or in the future, we will service them we will service colleges so that they can recruit our athletes.
Yeah, and college too. I think I agree, Diane. It's very.
You have to advertise that early, even though we don't have the app ready, and it probably won't be ready for a couple of months. We do have to promote UB Sports as that agent that can connect college coaches with athletes. That has to be up there first and foremost, because we want that. This is just as important as a sport is in terms of identifying. We have to identify whether they're recruitable or not. Yeah. If you want to get all those, NCAA teams and all those, NAIA teams to subscribe to your recruiting service, you have to have your numbers up. And in order to know what the population is out there, it has to be an identifier right off the bat. I wouldn't wait for that deep in the information gathering process.
I have an idea that might help us a little bit there, Greg. It might to reinforce what Dan's saying there is if we can build if we can find a way that they can have a guest come into your website, a potential student athlete wants to build their program, they can send it to a college that may be interested in saying, hey, I'm interested in joining you. Why don't you check out UBsports? I have a whole information about myself. Take a look at it. And they get on as a guest. And if they start seeing that more and more people going to them saying, I want you to come in and look at it, it might be more of a worthy for them to say, hey, I should just join this thing and get a list of everybody.
Correct. Yes, I think that's a great point.
Use the athletes to help us.
Yes, yes. Yes, because the other way around would be us promoting ourselves to the colleges, which we can do too. But like you said, if you go through the athletes and tell the athletes to let the recruiters know that their profile exists on UBsports, and there they could gather more information about them as not only athletes, but as people.
Right.
And that's what the college coaches want more. I mean, they could, watch games and watch film and determine their level of play, but the right key is, what type of person are you? What are your interests? Things like that. Their mindset. So that way they know they're bringing in quality student athletes into their program. And you can't get that. You can't get an answer to that by just watching film.
That's true.
I agree. That's
I think that is it's a good way of getting us in there, Greg. And that's what we have to talk to John about, making sure that a person who wants to be recruited, a student athlete, can somehow send a link or something to a potential college or whatever coach or athletic director they want to send it to. They can click on that link and get into that specific person's account to look at their information.
Yeah.
The whole site, this is the account. You come on as a guest, I guess, look at the whole site, but you really can't look at anybody's particular, for better word, resume of themselves, unless that person has contacted them, or they join us as and pay a fee.
Yeah, and I think once we have them on our site, we could then solicit these coaches as actual members, so they subscribe for themselves as former athletes or fans of the NBA, or they themselves can navigate anywhere from there. And so once they come in as a quote unquote recruiter, there's so much that's available to them other than just recruiting athletes.
Right. And parents too are a big place to do the marketing on that.
Yeah.
A lot of these parents want their kids to get, that they're on there because they want to see their kids achieve certain goals and get more involved and get better at their sport. They may want to be helped. Hey, maybe I can find a way to get you more recognition, pay for college, whatever,
Right.
Daniel, can we buy a list of college coaches, or can we get a list of college coaches?
No. Well, we used to call it the Blue Book, and it used to be a Blue Book of all the colleges and the coaches and their assistants. That database might still exist, because I remember we used to have to purchase a book because it was for film exchange. You had to know who you were reaching out to at what institution in order to get their film, so you could do scouting. Back in the days, that's how it worked. Now it's Synergy. Everybody puts their games up on Synergy, and you can just go on Synergy and access game film. But back in the day, you had to use the Blue Book to find out who the recruiting coordinator was, who the assistants were, who the head coach was, and that they had email information, phone numbers, they had everything in that book. I think that should still exist, but I'm not sure where. I'll have to ask and find out where that would be. But yeah, we did have that. We did have that. And it was legitimately a Blue Book. We call it the Blue Book.
Yeah, there's something called College Coaches Online that is 25,000 current head coaches at NCAA schools.
Yeah, I'm sure it still exists. And it's probably an online version of that Blue Book.
Yeah. So So that would be probably something that we should invest in and use that as our base. And then, so we'll know how to reach them. And then ask the kids when they join and they
Yes.
say they're recruitable, what colleges they want to go to. And then we can reach out to the college coaches and say, this kid's interested. We have some stats you might be interested in.
Right, we can, almost like a liaison between the student and the colleges,
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
like a pseudo agent, but not really an agent. Just kind of place. We'll put these people together.
Yeah, we can't charge for that side of it, but we can definitely get them into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Connect them. Yeah.
I
That's
think
marketing
that's the strongest point, a part of UB Sports. It's the recruiting aspect of it, for the potential recruiting aspect for students to find the college, and the colleges and pros, depending on the level you are at, finding their student. Or the
But
athlete.
I definitely, Greg, think that recruiting, the question whether they want to be considered recruitable has got to be up there with what's your email address and what sport do you play? Like, it's got to be, because we need an idea of our numbers, how many of our subscribers are actually athletes who are recruitable. And if we're seeing that number not rise, then we could do other marketing measures to attract more recruitable athletes to UB Sports. That way we could also sell our recruiting subscription, our recruiting services to colleges. Like, that's a money maker we don't want to dismiss,
Right.
or not have an opportunity to build. So it
Yeah,
has to be early.
Like, one of the questions might be like, of all the sports you're interested in, why are you interested in what are you most interested in UB Sports? To find, look at like a breakdown, check out all the sports I like, find more information, become a better player, or recruitment.
Yes.
Looking
Yeah.
at the college or pros, whatever. I want to be next to LeBron. I want to be next this, whatever it might be.
Yeah, something like that.
Right?
Yeah.
And then at least we'll have a better idea. It's a good point, David. We'll have a better aspect. We have a better build on our recruitment aspect.
Yes. Yeah.
Because people who play, to me, when they play a recreational sport, or even if you're I'm not playing college ball anymore. I'm not playing semi-pro ball anymore. I'm too old and all that. I'm still playing, being athletic as much as I can in playing activities. So I do want to learn some things I'm not too sure about, how to keep myself in shape at my age. What can I do to keep my sport going really well? Those are things I'm going to be interested in, but it's not recruitment. I can look around on the website and learn as I go along. But the recruitment part is totally different.
Mm-hmm.
So up front, when somebody comes in and asks for, like, a kid comes in and they say I'm recruitable, then that has to trigger those other stats that we need.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct. Yes.
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 So,
And only under athlete are we even asking if they're recruitable. We're not asking that recruitable question if they're an AD, if they're a coach, if they're a mom, a parent. We're not asking. It has to only be triggered and generated after they have identified themselves as an athlete.
and then we go for their stats.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we'd be getting a lot of stats that we can't use.
Yeah.
We're asking it to just anybody.
I don't care if I buy 500 or 400 in softball and I'm this and that and I'm playing great ball. Who cares?
Yeah.
If I'm recruitable, okay, it's important.
Right. Definitely.
It's only important. That's only important if you're looking to be recruited in the sport you're interested in.
Right. Right. And I think those are certain ages, right? Those are between 15 and maybe 20 are the ages that you might be recruitable.
Yeah.
Too old.
Right.
Maybe a little older, only because if a kid wants to transfer, if the kid wants to transfer from one institute, say they're a junior and they want to transfer because they have their senior year and an additional fifth year of eligibility.
Right.
They may be 23 at that point, maybe,
Right.
So I would say 20.
Sorry.
What's that? No. I would say about, what do you think, Bill? 25 maybe?
Yeah, that'll be the latest, because by then,
It doesn't really hurt to do that.
Right.
10-year window.
Yeah.
25. That's good.
Yeah.
Because some people skip a year of school, go back and get this, or they red shirt, they're not playing for the year, they're behind a little bit.
Yeah. And COVID pushes them back a year too.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep. Everybody has this extra year of eligibility too because of COVID. So these kids are going to be old, 25, 26.
Yeah.
But they're coming out with master's degrees and, possible start to their doctorate, which is good
Yeah.
for them. That's what's happening right now.
It's phenomenal. It's really good for them.
Yeah.
Especially if they're still getting scholarships and stuff.
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
I like what John was doing on that, but I totally agree with what we're talking about now. It's more important to get the people into the website, check it out, enjoy the website, get in there, and if they want to be recruitable, to say they're recruitable or not, so we can go from the window for there.
Right.
It'll
Number
save
one,
time and it'll
recruitable.
keep interest going.
Right. And like from my research, I've shown that about between 5 and 10% of the people who are going to join the site are going to be professionals in the sport, one way or another. They're going to be the coaches and the recruiters and those kind of people. Now we're pulling in a different population because we're able to market to the athletic trainers and the physical trainers now. And so that offers us to increase that percentage of the population. But
Right.
both of us are going to be there because we want to learn about our sports and be fans of the people who are on this site already, or family, and
Right.
those are the ones who are actually going to be using the site on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So I'd like to really try to cater ourselves to that, to asking what sports you like, and are you a beginner, intermediate, advanced? I found another, by the way, totally on the subject. There's this company called Sports Ed TV that has a bunch of videos, and they're getting more of them for training. And they have beginner, intermediate, advanced, and elite as their core categories. So I think that helps us if we do the same, if we're thinking along those lines. Hey, John.
Hey, good morning. Sorry I'm late. I was involved on another phone call. I couldn't get off, so.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we were just going through our conversation from last Friday. We're just going through what needs to be on that first page, the second page, and what people are going to be doing, and how we should handle that.
Yeah. So
One moment, right back.
So John, I obviously wasn't on last week's call, but what I sent to you, was that okay? Did you understand my feedback?
I did, and I've mentioned this to Greg and Bill last week.
Yeah.
I think we kind of need to regroup as a team, because I forget specifically whether you said, keep youth and drop elementary.
Yeah.
But
I said,
Leslie said the opposite.
I'll tell you why. Yeah, I figured that would be a question, and I'll tell you why. Because if you look on the list of data points for levels, I think it was, we had a lot of elementary, high school, junior high school, college, those type of educational kind of platforms, I think. So youth kind of came out of nowhere to me, because I would think youth, it would be adult. What's between adult and youth? We didn't have that. We had adult, I think. We had youth. I don't even think we had adult, to be honest with you. But I felt like youth, elementary is youth. Elementary starts in first grade.
Yeah, youth really, it's really the you're talking about 7, 8 years old in these groups.
Right, but that's also elementary. So I felt like youth fell on the elementary. But if you're going to go elementary, high school, junior college, college, and all the way up to professional, I didn't think youth fell in that. Youth kind of fell under elementary to me. That's the reason why
I agree. And I think the clarification I want to make, and I think what we need to kind of determine is, and I agree with you that elementary falls under the youth term.
Right.
But so would junior high from that perspective.
It does.
So
up to 14 years old, you consider.
And high school, for that matter, still is kind of youth, but we're classifying them differently. So that's why I think ultimately we kind of have to look at it from, okay, for the sport of baseball, you want these terms, and you might have youth at that level. Another
If you have
sport,
youth,
and the
to my
example,
point,
the example I used last week was, let's say, there's an elementary school that has an intramural kickball for, third and fourth graders. Maybe they would want, for kickball, you would have elementary and not just youth. To your point about not having the term adult, that was one of the questions I posed is, okay, so we have recreational, but maybe recreational should be broken up as recreational adult, recreational youth. So I think that these terms, and this is where the relationship comes in, is that for each and every sport, we have to identify what are the levels for each sport, and they may be very different. For one sport, you might use the term elementary instead of youth because of the nature of that sport. So that's kind of the thing. And from a process perspective, every time, let's say we get it set up, we figure out what we want now, right? Every time we go to add a new sport to our site and our apps, there's going to be kind of, if you think about it in a paper world, there's going to be a form that you would have to fill out, a lot of questions that have to be answered. Okay, I want to add this new sport to the site so people can pick it as a sport that they are active in or enjoy or whatever. So we're going to have to do things like, who is the ambassador of the sport? What are the levels for this sport? What are the leagues at the various levels for this sport? So if in the old paper model, you'd think you'd have a sheet of paper that would have these questions that would have to be answered before you can create the sport in the website. Like, you're not going to be able to just go in and say, oh, I want to add this new sport, kickball, and punch it into the admin tool and create the sport, because you have to define the relationships as what levels are there for the sport. Are there professional kickball players? Are there Olympic kickball players? Are there college kickball players? Or is it purely recreational or intramural? That kind of thing. So, in this particular example, New York City, one of the leagues in New York City does have adult recreational kickball leagues. But that's it. It's purely recreational. You would also potentially have intramural kickball in elementary schools. Now, whether we decide to call it elementary or youth, I don't know that there's a difference in the term, but those are the kind of decisions that have to be, the types of information that have to be identified before we add a new sport to the system. Now, that holds true for the sports we're going to start with when we launch, as well as for new sports in the future.
Well,
That's
John,
where we're trying to go.
I agree in that part, but I think we can establish a kind of template, so to speak, that has kind of the standard stuff we're going to ask. And of course, we can make additions to make it more personalized, the particular sport that's coming in. That will save us a lot of time to build say, kickball in that sense. I'll have a breakdown of all the others, and we can delete or add things that we deem necessary. On the youth
Correct.
aspect, I feel you should be youth all the way through for less confusion, but it should be a youth, say, 6 to 12 years old. Youth, 11 to 15 years old. Right? That way because you really don't find many elementary schools doing a sport on the lower grade levels. The only time you see that is usually from 7th or 8th grade. You see something that they play another little elementary school for some other particular sport, but you want to get the younger ones involved. So if you keep them at a grade level, at age level, instead of saying elementary, be less confusion to somebody looking at the site.
Well, you know, there's, I think, in my perspective, it's youth is extracurricular, and when you say elementary or middle school or high school, you're talking about curricular sports. Sports are played within the within the school, and among other schools in that division or that section,
Okay, that's true.
right? And that so when you're doing a youth, when you're in youth, then you can say under 9, under 11, under 15, whatever. And when you're talking about school, you don't have the U19s. You have grades 7 to 10 and
Right.
11 and 12.
Well, and maybe that lends itself to the fact that when you set up a sport, maybe our levels should be a little more qualified in that you say these are this is curricular, high school, curricular, junior high, curricular,
Yeah.
elementary. And then you would say extracurricular and have something
Right,
else
well.
where you would say youth and
Yes, yes.
and adult. So maybe the levels as I've listed are not yet complete, right? And so maybe we have to kind of flush out the terminology for these roles. And that's where, you know, if you recall, I said there's some conflicts in the levels where there's an overlap where this level, the terminology of this level, like junior high, conflicts with the terminology of youth, right? So maybe we need to kind of qualify and have both in there, but we would need to change the word that we use, the term that we use, so that the member can understand what it is they're supposed to pick. Okay, so maybe we say extracurricular, you know, junior high, or we say recreational youth or intramural youth. Okay, so those are the kind of terms, and this is really nitty gritty, and I get it, and it can be complex, but this has to be defined, or you're going to end up with a system with people making choices of stuff that don't really fit what we want or what they need.
What? Okay.
So
My question is, what are the differences in what we're supplying to these people, depending on what they decide? If they say I'm playing baseball in 7th grade in school, or I'm playing baseball as a youth at 14, is there a difference to what we're going to supply them, the experience? Is that going to be different?
No,
Well, I don't know that.
And that's what I think we really.
I would think that
well, as a coach, I know that.
the question, I think, the important question is not the experience may not necessarily change, but the ads you target to them or the email communications you target to them may be different. Okay, and that's where you may have a difference in the experience, is in those aspects of their demographics. Okay, so maybe we can simplify this and you can say, well, I'm professional, semi-pro, Olympic, junior Olympic, college, junior college, high school, junior high, other.
That's
Does that fit? Now, maybe you still need youth in there somehow, whatever. But maybe my examples are too granular for what we need. You know, is there really a difference between college and junior college? Are you going to want to target ads or target email messages differently to college or junior college or community college members?
Well, I think that comes from what we were talking about earlier, Greg, was the recruitability.
Yeah.
You're not going to see a difference in learning how to play baseball, say, in junior college as you are in college.
Right.
In community college, you can still learn how to play the game as the game is played. However, who are you going to talk to? How you get some stuff together? What kind of reel you put together? Who can recruit, pick me up somewhere? How am I recruitable? That's the big change in the different levels, more so than learning to play the sport.
Yeah, John, we were talking before you got here about whether we should ask somebody if they're recruitable if they're younger than 15 and older than 25.
Right, because that's really they're looking to be who's more serious in the sport that looks at something for get a college scholarship.
Yeah, but I don't think, I can tell you right now, based on our past conversations and based on what I know, you can't just draw it on that age, because I could be a 10-year-old gymnast who wants to be recruited for the Olympics.
Right.
Yeah, then they can ask us
You're a
though.
baseball player.
They can ask though. That's like okay, you're a good case. Okay, great. We'll add more to this. It's a great idea. Thank you. Instead of, like I said, building our template. We got it out there. It covers most people, not everybody. Right? And these young special talents, especially like a gymnast, they really start young. They want to do that. We can now add that or gear toward helping them get more recruitment at a younger age for that particular sport. That's fine. That's a great idea. If it comes to us.
But there, I think, those are the kind of sports that aren't going to be done in high school. Those are almost all extracurricular.
Right.
Right. There's very, very few high schools have gymnastics now, and very few high schools have wrestling. They're all like dying programs right now. So they're all going to be extracurricular. So
well, a lot of your Olympic gymnasts, for example, develop their skills through private programs like the Parkettes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So anyway, the point was that I don't think you can automatically say 15 is the age, to ask whether they're recruitable or not.
Right.
Well, it's a general number. I mean, when I played football and baseball, I moved up. I played both varsity and I lettered varsity, and I played freshman baseball, and I played varsity baseball. When I played, I was playing for my freshman team, but they were shorthanded on the varsity team. The coach asked my coach to come up and bounce me up. I played at right field in varsity as a freshman. So the changing between the two groups are too different. When I was playing football, I was playing football for this at a junior grade level outside, and at high school I got pulled in. My varsity coach and my freshman coach put me on the team. I was playing for freshman and for varsity until practicing wise until the season started. Then in football, I could only play varsity. You can't play both. I wasn't allowed to play both in New York City Catholic high schools. So, but I was being trained on both. They both recruited me, and I was two different levels, but I was able to go balance up. Except I didn't have any kind of recruitability to anywhere to look for.
Yeah, so that site, Sports Ed TV, they ask you what level you're at, and they have videos that are specific to those levels. They have beginner, they have intermediate, advanced, and elite. And so I think also we should really care about that almost more than age, because you're going to have a 15-year-old who's going to be elite in a sport, right? And there's going to be a 25-year-old person who's going to be elite in that sport. And those are the kind of things that
there's going to be a 25-year-old who's a novice.
Yeah, exactly right.
Right.
So age is less relevant than how good they are at their sport.
Well, the NCAA has a cutoff for age.
Right.
NCAA schools do have a cutoff for age, so they're not going to accept a 27-year-old. I believe, what is it, Eddie, 25 to play NCAA sport? 26? Yeah, there's a cutoff age.
It's 25, yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
Huh.
So, yeah.
So if I'm 28 and I go to college, I can't play?
It's
No.
a rule, yeah.
They do have a cutoff age, because you could be a very big 28-year-old playing football compared to a very skinny or smaller 16, 17-year-old freshman, and you kill them on the football field, probably. Yeah. So yes, there is a cutoff.
What if I'm the small, skinny 28-year-old?
No, it's a cutoff for an age. There is a cutoff for age. That's why I said 25.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. But my thing is, it's either we do two things with all of this that we're trying to discuss. You cast a wide net and you give people the option to choose what fits their agenda.
Right.
Or you keep it simple so that we can continue to track them and promote different things towards the data points that they picked. We can't have it both ways.
I think we could.
Right.
You could start out with a wide net, get them in there, then you can be more specific.
Well, that's fine, but I was just talking about deciding right now what are we asking? You know, what are we asking? What do we think is important right now to ask? Maybe asking whether it's elementary is good now, and then later on asking whether it's youth, or, but I don't know if you want to give them both an option early, youth and elementary, for example, and then later on change it. I don't know. So
I would just say
Um,
youth, are you playing, and then like you have your choice of one or both. Either you're playing extracurricular or you're playing in school. And that allows us to, know who actually, that's not really going to change their experience. What that's going to do is allow us to talk to their
exactly.
coaches and their leagues.
Right.
And then, take it up higher and try to get them involved so they can get the rest of their teammates on board.
Mhm.
And that's,
Okay, so
you know,
let's take this back again to what do we need to do to get the system defined so that they can build it either for the launch or for a next phase or whatever. But we have to be able to allow the members, when they're creating their profile, to identify, like, and this holds true for different roles, but not all of them. Like facility manager, you don't really necessarily ask a sport
right.
or a level, right? So it's only applies to certain roles, but you have to pick a sport and the level at which you play at, okay, for each team that you play on. So ultimately, the database needs to be populated with the relationship between, for this sport, these are the levels that you play at. For sport number 2, these are the levels you play at. Both sports could have the same levels, or they could have different levels, depending on the needs for that sport and how that sport is viewed, okay? So ultimately, that is what the developers need to build the system. So at some point, we have to come up with a list of each sport and the levels that apply to that sport. Then the next sport and the levels that apply to it. So if we're doing 100 sports, we have to have 100 sets of levels. Now, maybe 70 of those sports all have the same levels. But nevertheless, the list that we give the developers will have 70 sports, each with the same 6 or 10 or 20 levels, however we define them. And then the other sports might have some uniqueness to their levels. But that is what ultimately we have to turn over to the developers in order for them to build this. Now, personally, I don't care what term you use to call each level. And I'm not knowledgeable enough about the sports to know what levels apply to the sports. But the end result of our effort here has to be to come up with this list that for this sport, these levels, for sport 2, these levels, for sport 3, these levels. If we don't come up with that full, complete list, which is going to be lengthy if we do 100 sports, for example, then the developers cannot set up the database to give us the choices when they build their profile.
Okay,
The question you ask from the business perspective is going to be, what do we need to know, or what are we going to do differently for each level? Is it important to have a separate level? Okay, now there's the website experience. Are you going to serve up different content, videos, blogs, etc., for the different levels? Are you going to serve different ads to the different levels? And third is, are you going to send different marketing communications? Like, am I going to want to send specific communication to each level? Okay. If the answer is yes to any of those three things, content, advertising, and marketing communications, if the answer is yes, that will vary based on a specific level, then that level has to be identified specifically.
Okay,
What term
right.
you
I think the
use for that
question
level?
is, I think the question is, John, when we ask that question, not if we ask that question, but and how granular we get with what levels we give. My feeling is the first thing we have to ask them is what sports they're into, what sports they like. And that should be the first thing we ask. You know what? Name, email, zip code, age, what sports you like. And then that keys up what kind of content we're going to give them the next time, how we reach back to them by email when we're trying to get them back in. I think this second page too, right off the bat, when they confirm their email or they confirm their parents' email, is that we say, how proficient are you? And I think even like a slider that has proficient and one side says beginner, the other side says Olympic or pro, just by them picking that place on the slider gives an idea of what kind of content we should be giving them. Are we giving them skills and drills for an intermediate player or an elite player or a beginner?
Okay, but that applies to the athlete role,
exactly.
but that doesn't apply to the coach.
Well, the coach,
or
again,
to the athlete.
I was telling the guys before, or the people before, sorry, Dania, that there are, you know, as far as the percentage of people we're going to have on the site who are coaches and recruiters and pros in the sport, if we get past 10% on that, that's going to be a lot. The other 90% are going to be players and fans and family. So those are the people we have to really cater that first experience to. And we should always, you and I talked about this on Friday, we should always have like a button down at the bottom saying, I'm a pro in this, I'm an industry professional. And that's a whole different set of questions we're asking, right? Then you get into the roles. But right off the bat, my experience looking at a sport is going to be, I want to watch fun stuff and I want to learn how to play better. That's really the two things I'm going to be interested in. No, if I'm any one of those 90%. So those are the first things we need to know is what sports you're going to be interested in watching and how we're going to get you back. So that's why I'm saying the first page is what sports you're into, and the second page starts off as saying what, you know, with those sliders or however we do it, you know, what level are you, and then we get into those other questions. Okay, you're really great. Would you be recruitable, or are you recruitable because we know your age? And that's internally.
Okay, so that changes the flow,
right?
Like the diagrams of how to go through the profile a bit, which is maybe moderately consequential. However, at some point you still have to say, what role are you playing?
Absolutely.
Are you an athlete? Are you a coach? And then you have to ask them what level. Is it high school, college, you know, et cetera. So, and we still run into the same question about how you correlate the role to the level.
I think all the levels are pretty much going to be the same with, of course, additions of subtractions on specific sports. Why can't we just make it to say 7 different levels you mentioned earlier? That's the levels for every sport we come into. There'll be exceptions.
And that could very well be.
Right? And
that could very well be. We can set it up that way.
That way you can build it, right?
We need consensus on what those levels are. That's what where we're trying to go. And I completely agree, Bill.
Could I ask you a question? Is there any way at this point early in the launch and the subscription process that we allow a lot more custom fields and allow people to input what they think their level is, and then from there generate a database based on everything that was inputted to fit our marketing, to fit our advertisement, to fit our communication? Can we do it the other way around instead of right now racking our brains trying to cover every?
You can do it that way. You can even offer up a set of levels that are predefined and have a custom level so that they can type in their own if they don't feel that any of the ones we've offered them fits.
Right, right.
The problem you run into is just, for example, if I put in, I play at the college level, and the next person puts in, they play at the college level, but they spell it with only one L, that'll be different. You know, that person will be an orphan. Like, because we can go through and say, okay, we've now defined college, update everybody who typed in this custom college level, but it's not going to fix that person that had it spelled as COLEGE.
But it doesn't change their
So-
experience. It only changes their experience if they're
Sure will.
recruitable.
Well, the
Sure
other thing,
will. You won't be able to define an experience for people that have that custom level. If you change the custom level for people, when we define college spelled correctly, we can update all the users in the database to be at that newly defined college level. And their experience will change. But anybody who put in a typo, for example, would not get that new experience.
Okay, so the question is, how would that experience change? That's my question. Is you know, if we know they're 18, what are we going to give them if they're in college or not in college?
Well, if they're in college, you may ask them if they're recruitable for the next level of that sport, for pros or whatever, right?
Exactly.
So you would miss that opportunity. You know, let's say somebody put in, let's say somebody put in, and typos are kind of a one-off scenario, right? But let's say I put in small college. I won't know to automatically update them because they don't match the word college. Okay, so they won't get whatever experience we create for a college level player.
But that's
And if you
considered
try
a
to
robot is
market-
looking. If that's considered a robot
Yeah.
is looking at those fields. If it's a human, you know, looking at those fields, we'll be able to tell whether it's college or coolage. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but you're never going to have a human look through 20,000 members.
but isn't it Google that does it a lot? I type something out, I'm looking for searching or something, and I misspell the word. It comes down, are you looking for this?
Yeah, yeah.
Correctly. So I said, oh yeah, you're right. I misspelled it. Boom. Yeah. That's someone-
Yes.
Can't we do the same thing for
Well,
us?
and that's why I said, okay,
Computers do it anyway.
a typo might be a wrong example, but let's say I put in small college. You have the
No,
same
no one-
issue as a
yeah,
typo.
well, why would somebody? I mean, I get your point, but I don't think anybody would put small college or college. They'd either put college or university, despite
Right.
the size. But I get your point. I get your point.
If we offer up a handful of standard
Right.
levels, pro,
Yes.
pro, college, Olympic, they'll pick those. The real
Correct.
question is going to be, what if it's like an adult recreational player? What are they going to type in? You're going to have so many like what Bill types for his rec softball, adult rec softball level is going to be different than mine. I might put in competitive adult. Bill might put in recreational adult, and we might play in the same damn league on the same damn team, right? So,
Yeah.
so you know, I don't want to overcomplicate the discussion of this, but we have to understand the impact of these. So the bottom line is, we can allow to answer your question, Dania, we can allow custom entries, but that means that there will be challenges down the road when we try to standardize those things. Okay, so as we go and we say, we now want to create recreational adult levels for certain sports. How do you find the people, the 500,000 players that have signed up and put those custom entries in? You're not going to be able to find them.
What about having them say, instead of customizing, you're saying, if you don't see anything on your list here, send
Other-
contact this email address and send it to us. That way, maybe it'll keep them customized by asking a question, and we can, and that way we can look at it on email wise. But you're
Yes.
part of this group, you're a part of that group, where that could be just as hectic as the other one.
Yes, so we can do it, whatever way we want. But we need to come up with, what is our list going to look like? What are the relationships between the roles and those levels? And that's it.
Yeah.
And then we can kind of review it and say, okay, we're all in consensus that this is satisfactory to start with. Okay, and we can build upon it later. And maybe building on it later is going to be more complex because you have custom levels. So maybe you have to send a lot more emails to people to encourage them to revisit their profile now that we've done things. But people that don't do that aren't going to get whatever experience we've created for that particular level that we've now standardized. So
Well, the experience.
It becomes a more costly venture, but at that point in time, we should have more money to address it, okay? To me, that's a separate thing. But the ultimate goal here is to define, these are the sports, and for each and every sport, these are the levels we want to display, whether or not we offer up a custom.
But to Greg's point, the experience is still going to be the same, despite the fact that they made a mistake on the level. We still have their name, we have their birthday, we have their email address, we know what sports they're interested in. We have enough information that their experience is going to be the same. It's when it comes to, like you said, advertisement and marketing communication. And there was one more thing you had mentioned, that now that level becomes important if we want to decipher. Right, the content. If we want to, at that point, decipher whether the level determines what content that they see, or what marketing communications is, or what advertisement is. So, but the experience, you keep using the word experience, and I think to Greg's defense, or Greg's point was, the experience should be the same, but it's not the experience. It's more of beyond the experience. Now, when we get into different aspects of what UBsports can provide besides the overall experience, you have to have we have to have the correct data to know what you fall under in terms of what we promote to you. So I think the word experience is what is throwing it off. John, if that makes sense. But let's find another term for not experience. It's more of, now when we get into more of a marketing type of push and identifying people that we want to target, we need to know specifically what these fields are and levels are, correct?
Right.
Greg,
Yeah, and I think
that's what you're saying?
To an extent, I think the experience, you're right. The experience itself may not change.
Yeah.
However, the content, when someone at a certain level is visiting the site, the content that they see may change. They may get different videos. They may get different blogs. We may suggest different groups for them based on their level.
Their level.
Okay.
Gotcha.
The level that they choose may define some other characteristics, like what league are they in? Okay. That kind of thing. But I think that's a lesser issue. That's more down the rabbit hole. But it's what blogs are going to be recommended for me to read? What videos are going to be recommended for me to read? What ads for sneakers are going to be recommended to me? Or is it going to be cleats?
Those wouldn't just be simplified by the sport. Those just, all that you just mentioned, isn't that just what sport? Because it doesn't matter the blogs and the content if it's all for baseball, despite the level.
I mean, these are all questions for Greg. But in my mind, if I'm a professional baseball player, you're going to show me different videos, I hope, than the Little League baseball player. And maybe professional is the wrong example. But if I'm a college basketball player, the videos that I'm going to see and the training blogs that I'm going to see or that are going to be recommended to me are going to be different than the Little League basketball player.
Now the question, John, all that stuff, if say a person is a high school player, but a really good player, the person wants to see college kind of videos and everything else. They're not being locked out where they can't go to a higher level and look at something higher, right? Granted, our
It's
emails to them,
it's more what you're recommending. It's
right.
more what you recommend.
But they can jump up themselves. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, they can go to the videos for that sport and search for things on their own and browse through them.
Right.
But the fact is, if they go to that sport page and want to see videos, or when they go into the My World page, what do we populate in their video feed? You want to target it to the level at which they play. Right? Now you can make it so that there is no variation, that a professional or a college basketball player is going to get the same recommended videos as a Little League basketball player. Right? And if you can show the same ones and have no difference in what's recommended, and they can still go out and search for different ones that suit them better. But I think the concept that Greg has is that the content that's recommended to that member, that user, is going to be more geared to exactly what they are, to the level at which they play.
So you said that we would possibly have to come up with levels for 100 sports, possibly. And that obviously is difficult, would be difficult. Is there any way we can make that process easier? Like you said, maybe just identify a certain number of levels that we think people will most likely choose, and then have the custom. Can we use that process for each sport, or do you think each sport has to be looked into a little bit deeper to find out?
Kind of what I was saying before.
I think we can use that concept. There might be a couple sports that are exceptions to the rule, perhaps gymnastics or something. So there might be a few sports that are exceptions. But if we can come up with that base level of 5, 7, 10, whatever levels, and say this applies to 90% of our sports, it does make it easier. Okay. The custom level, if we build that into it, certainly complicates things when we in the future want to say, well, we want to add this to one of the standard levels now, because we see that there's enough members that are picking a level that we didn't think of. Okay. And when we go to add that as a standard, we have some additional complications that ultimately means additional money or time to change that from a custom level to one of our standard offerings. Okay.
Yeah, that's down the road. That's good.
That's down the road. That's future stuff. So yes, we can simplify it by reducing the less levels that you have, the simpler it becomes. The less difference between that set of levels and the sports simplifies the process. So if I think of a spreadsheet and we come up with 7 default levels that we offer, whether it's 5, 7, 8, 10, whatever it is, let's say 7. We have 7 levels. And I say in a spreadsheet, I have 7 rows for baseball, each of those levels. And then you have football, and I copy and paste those 7 levels.
Right.
And then I have soccer, and I copy paste them. Okay. And then I have gymnastics. Well, this is a one-off. So I paste those 7, but I add a unique one for gymnastics. That's the kind of output that we need to generate to give to the developers so they can build the system.
Your description was exactly what I was just saying before. Maybe I can this is what we want, all of them, and we can always do the minor adjustment, addition, or subtraction, whatever. I agree. That's definitely
exactly
with them.
Exactly. So the real question is, what are those levels? What term do we use for those levels? And is that going to cover our immediate needs?
Did we not
For the
identify
member-
those already? Did we not identify those already? I know I did it for basketball. Did you see that? I did it for basketball.
Yes,
So do you,
yes.
so
And
can we,
what I think I saw was that the levels that you said for basketball conflict with what Leslie said for something else.
or yeah, I'm sure she added youth. Her gripe was more so on the youth end, or were there other levels? Because she didn't do basketball. So where would it have conflicted? Because I didn't see her stuff.
Well, the very specific one was, and I forget who said what, but one of you said, get rid of elementary and use youth. And the other one
That was me.
said, get rid of youth elementary.
All right.
That's just
Oh.
one example.
I was the first one.
Okay,
Okay, so we need to come to consensus that
gotcha.
this is
on
the
that.
term we use,
Right, got it.
right?
Well, like I said,
So-
I said to take out youth because I thought the follow-up for youth, and you guys let me know, because the follow-up for youth is what? U19, U18, U17, like what is the follow-up for youth? The follow-up for elementary was, what's the name of your school? What grade? So what's the follow-up for youth? What do you ask? What's the next information to be gathered? That I said, I play youth sport. I play youth basketball. Do we need to know the name of the
If you
CYO
play-
team you play for?
If you say that you play basketball youth,
Yeah,
the next question that you ask is, tell us the name of your team if you want, that's optional. Tell us the name of the league you're in, that's optional. Because you don't really have well-defined teams or leagues at that
And-
level.
yeah. Because for me, youth basketball is AAU, but AAU is it also, I mean, it goes by AAU now. Used to go by U16, U15, U whatever. Now it just goes by
I mean, if you
graduation
look
graduation date.
if you look at, and I'm not as familiar with basketball, but if you look at youth football,
Uh-huh.
there's Pop Warner leagues.
Okay.
Different
and
levels
then
in that league.
there's other kinds of youth football that aren't Pop Warner.
Right.
Now, how that really applies to what we're doing and if it makes a difference, I don't know. Okay, but this is where the complexity of what we're doing grows. Because Dania, you can give us a list and say, this is going to work for the things that I'm aware of, basketball,
Yes.
whatever else.
Yes.
But then Leslie has to come up with a list, and she has to look at your list and say, does this work for me, for the
Got
things I'm looking?
Got it. So
And if it does, fine. And then
Good.
Bill
So-
has to look at it like baseball, and he has to say, does that list work for me?
Right.
If not, he has to say, we need to add this one thing or change this. Then we
Good.
go back to each of you
Right.
guys and say, does this work with this change? That's the consensus we have to come up with. Whether
can we
it's
do
2
that?
levels or 50. Well, that's
Yeah.
the nature of this exercise. That's where we're trying to go.
Okay. Well, let's do that
Now,
because I haven't
Leslie's
obviously.
not here to explain her thing. I also kind of, Greg, expected you to kind of weigh in a little bit more and say, well, I see these are the business reasons why we need specific levels.
Yeah, sorry, guys. I had people downstairs I had to talk to. So
That's right.
yeah, we're having some construction guys work. So when the foreman shows up, you got to talk to him. So okay, so what was that again?
I mean,
I agree.
the idea, Greg, is to come up with a smaller list of levels
Yeah, I agree.
that we offer up to people to select from for most sports. There might be a couple of one-off sports like gymnastics or something like that, and you just tweak them so they're a little different. But the fact is that we have to come up with this list of levels, and we have to identify what those levels apply to. All sports, except for these ones. And then for those exceptions, you come up and say, here's what we need to change or add for that particular group. And if you go back to my spreadsheet where it showed the roles and the levels, or I'm sorry, the sport and the level, that's what we're trying to accomplish. And my list of levels was like, I don't know, there was like 25 of them, but a lot overlapped. So
Right.
what we need to do is consolidate that list and identify what sports get that. And we need to come to consensus that this abbreviated list. So what I said just before you came back, Greg, was Dania might come back and say, okay, for the sports I'm looking at, here's 7 levels. Bill has to look at it for baseball and say, okay, I agree with those 7 levels for baseball. It works. If he doesn't agree and says, well, we need this other one, or we need to change this one or remove this one because it doesn't apply to baseball, then Dania has to look at it again and say, okay, I agree with that change or whatever. But ultimately, that list has to be a kind of, we have to come to consensus that this list works. Now, I can certainly go through the list of levels that I created based on the feedback that all of you provided, because that list of 25 levels comes from the profile data that was created by you guys. So I can take it, consolidate it the way I think it should be consolidated, that captures maybe most of the rules that we have, and then present that back to everyone and say, does this work for your sport? And do we think it works for these sports that nobody's really focused on yet?
Well, John, I sent you one that.
So
I sent you that with the crossed off the red colors and different colors that I want to keep and not get rid of.
Yeah.
When I added, they made the color on that. Is that what something we need to look at to compare that to all the others and come up with a one general plan?
yeah, kind of like, yes, you know, in a way, yes. Like I could take the master list that I originally built and say, okay, the suggestion is to remove this one. And if we get everybody to say, you know, remove this one, add this one, change the word of this one, etc., and we get everybody to say, okay, I'm finally in agreement, that's where we need to get to, whether it's 7 levels or 20, you know. And then Greg, this is where you have to weigh in, is that when we come up with the consolidated list and we all say, okay, we've come to consensus that these are the levels that will work initially for us. You have to tell us that works for me from a business perspective, because you might come back and say, wait a minute, you don't have this level. And I expect very clearly to market something to this group of people at this level.
Right. Well, that's certainly
Okay.
true for the recruiting part of things. We need to know who's, you know, what sports are recruitment sports and who's recruitable. So that obviously is clearer for the recruitment app. I think that, yeah, we do need to know all those things. I think we have to start with the single thing that we're all playing for fun. And if we're playing a sport, then the first question should be, I play because I love it, or it's recreational. And as soon as you go from there, the next thing should be competitive ad hoc. And after that, yeah, you get down to the levels, but I think you have to try to get people to answer the most frequently answered answer up front. So you need recreational, really just for fun. And then the second would be competitive. And then for the activities like yoga, you know, I'm doing it for my health. And after that, that's when you get down to I'm a senior in high school. I'm looking to get recruited. But, you know, you're getting, as soon as you get past recreational or competitive or for my health, then you get into operationally a whole different category of reasons for finding that kind of information out, because you want to find out what team or league they're in.
Let me ask you something. What, like, just kind of as a side note, what qualifies as being competitive versus recreational? I mean, all of my softball is technically recreational softball.
Well, if you ride a bike.
What qualifies as being competitive? You know, you could play you could play adult softball and be on a team that is really geared on playing national tournaments. All you do is travel, to 8 weekend tournaments all season long against national teams to win the national ASA championship, right? So that's competitive.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I think the difference between recreational and amateur. Amateur and professional means amateurs, you're competitive in your sport, but you're not getting paid for it to do your sport. So for recreational, I think it's more like I'm having fun out there. But when you say I'm an amateur sports player, ASA is a good example. Those are amateur sports athletes that could go pro in professional sport and softball leagues, but they had one. But they're not competitive. So you're right. There is a difference between recreational and amateur, though. I see your point.
And that goes to where maybe now, if you're trying to minimize the number of levels you have, my comment doesn't really apply. But maybe it's important to have the level be amateur competitive, professional competitive, amateur recreational, right? Maybe those are your 3 levels. At least in that scenario, you'd still have other levels. But, like these are the questions that we need to think about as you build this list of levels.
Right.
And I think if you come up with something like 7 levels or 6 levels or even 10 levels, the question comes to what exactly is that really granular enough for what we want to do as a business for these members?
The question is, what do we want to do? We want to find out. We're trying to gain population, right? That's our main goal, is to gain population by having people really excited about the site and being there and having fun on it, person to person. But as soon as we ask them what team they're playing on or what club they play at, that gives us an opportunity to go to that team or club and try to get the rest of their teammates in, or possibly even the club and then the league. So marketing, that gives us ways to get to other centers of influence that are much larger than just the person who joined the site. That's really, our goal is to get to the upper levels so that we can get more people onto the site, to get them all talking to each other and coming to the site again, because they're either going to figure out times when they can play with each other, or when their practices are or workouts are, or the matches are. I'm thinking about just regular club sports. If I play platform tennis, right? So what I care about is ad hoc games. I want to be able to reach out to other people in my club and say, hey, you want to play this Friday at 6? Or I want to, there's a tournament coming up and I want to play then. So that means that I have to get the club pro involved. So really,
so let me ask you, let me interrupt there, Greg, and ask you, for platform tennis, what roles do you think you see you would want to choose from for platform tennis?
Amateur for fun and competitive, and then club player at my local club. I mean, really, there's no pros, right? So, and there's actual amateur. There's the American Platform Tennis Association, the APTA. And so they have rankings, the same as like USTA does, or 3, 3.5, 4, that kind of stuff. And you can play regional tournaments and that kind of stuff. But you're not going to find it played in college. You're not going to find it played in high school, really.
Okay, so you're saying that there's 3 levels. There's amateur recreational, amateur competitive, and what was the third one?
Club.
Yeah.
Maybe club and competitive.
Club.
Yeah, you said club.
I guess.
Something about club. Okay, so there's those 3. Those 3 levels don't really apply to baseball, basketball, or anything else right off the bat.
Right, exactly.
2 do. Amateurs, recreational,
Right.
Competitive do.
Now, for basketball, yes, amateur recreational, amateur competitive might apply to basketball.
Yeah.
Maybe club doesn't. But in basketball, you're going to have professional, Olympic, college, high school, and possibly youth.
Well, you also have
Those don't apply to platform.
if you go play
Right, right. But
rec center.
what I'm saying is that those 5 levels that I just listed, and it might be an incomplete list, but those 5 levels for basketball, you're not going to display if someone says, I'm interested in platform tennis.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is the point, is that even if we come up with a list of 7 standard things, platform tennis is immediately a one-off.
Absolutely.
So in order to identify that, even if we come up with a basic list, a standardized list of 7 or 6 or 10 levels, somebody then has to look at those after we come to consensus on them and say, does this apply to baseball? Does this apply to football? Does it apply to platform tennis? Does it apply to squash? And if it doesn't, we have to build the custom list for those one-off sports. That's where we are. That is what we need to do.
Now, John, did you get everybody's list of what their roles are and all the different levels that when you asked it for my, I know you got mine, you got Daniel's. Did you get Leslie's and
I got Leslie's. And I got Leslie's as well. Now,
So
Bill, I haven't kind of viewed yours and compared it to what Dania and Leslie gave. But like I said, Dania's and Leslie's had a specific conflict. So that immediately tells me that for those 2 things, you know, you're already saying that you don't have a standardized list.
I was just trying to avoid the overlap, which was why you asked us to even look at the list in the first place. So I assumed that youth and elementary was the overlap, that we didn't use both, especially if we're going all on academic levels, all the way up to college. I felt youth could have been under elementary, not excluded, but it was, in my mind, it was an overlap, if that makes sense.
John, is there a way you can give us the whole list of what we've all said on one whole kind of thing? We can all look at it and say, you know, I'm agree with this, I agree with that, I don't agree with the next one, and kind of break down that whole huge list.
Yeah.
The smaller one.
Yeah, I mean, I can go through and incorporate your feedback. I can incorporate all of your feedback into the original list so that you can see that, okay, it's suggested that we get rid of this. It's suggested that we add this, et cetera, and say, this is what we've come up with.
And we can look at it and we can come out our conclusion, say, yeah, you're right, we get rid of this, keep this, don't this, and break it down and give you the standard amount we would need. Because it could be, like I said, it could be 6, could be 10, could be 12, we don't know exactly how many.
Yeah, I agree with that.
In order to come up with that final consensus, each one of us is going to have to take that final list and say, does this apply to this sport? Does this apply to this sport?
Right,
And then
that's right, but I need the whole list so I can look at it and compare. Yes.
So at some point, all of us are going to have to go through this list. You know, if you have 20 sports and let's say 10 roles, that's 200 things that we all have to look through and come up to an agreement on. Okay, so we all have to go through that at some point. That's
We do
where
that.
we're trying to get to.
We could have a meeting though, and the next call, we could have a call with the list up.
Yeah, yeah.
We look at all over it and we have a meeting together and say, okay, I think this would be good. Daniel have another one, Greg will have another group, and everybody have their own suggestions, right with the list that's right there in front of you.
Yeah.
We can come up to the conclusion for you to get things quick.
Yeah, I mean,
quicker.
frankly, that's what I was expecting when I got the feedback from each of you, was to come up with that list, but we haven't, this is the first time that the majority of us have even gotten together since then.
Yeah.
Right.
Amy was gone, Leslie was gone, et cetera. So, yes, that's exactly what we need to do and where we need to go.
Yeah, when we have, if we all see the list you have there, and then in our meeting, the list is up in front of us, we already have it in our own email, we looked at it over already. Now we can all discuss it and break it down to a smaller group.
Yeah, and I think for the future, just so that doesn't happen and we're not wasting time, we could always email the next task or put it on Slack. Like, hey, this is the list of all the levels. Can you guys review it for our next meeting? Or send me feedback through email. Like, this call is great for discussion, but the discussion should be after a task is completed. We shouldn't have the discussion to find out what tasks are necessary. If you, John, or Greg finds that during the week that there are tasks that needs to be completed before our next call, I'm sure everybody's available to do that through Slack or through email. Agreed?
Yeah, I think actually email, I'm going to find something from email. You have to be almost proactive to go to Slack. I think email for something like this, when we have to react and get back to a meeting to look at the stuff and then have a meeting tomorrow. I think timeliness, I think either for me, email, and even faster is text.
That's what we should do then.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of email, one last thing. I think we're probably complete with talking about this, but the age for the recruitable athletes, should we not include an age at all, or should we widen the range of ages that we accept for recruitable purposes?
Checkbox, really. It's not going to hurt anybody who.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Perfect. That's fine.
Yeah.
I was going to say that. And the last thing is, Greg, you had sent an email. Speaking of emails, you sent an email about a form that we all need to complete.
That
The
was for
last email you
ambassador.
sent.
No, actually, that you guys were copied on it, but it's really going out to the ambassadors.
Got it. Okay. That was what I was asking. Okay. Okay.
All right. So I was looking at John's thing, and he had a bunch of, roles and levels and that kind of stuff, and that's one of the things we have to really narrow down to get to,
That's
what we're doing. I think it would be. We have to keep this in mind, is that what we're trying to do is find out what the best experience is for these people who sign on and why they're signing on, and what we can deliver to them that's going to make them come back. And that's, my goal is to get that. And the other things really are secondary to our primary goal, which is to find out if they're interested in fun, if they're interested in increasing their abilities, to increasing their health. Those are the questions that we need really answered in order to supply them with the stuff that they need in order to want to come back and be involved.
Yeah, that's first and foremost, and then we can always add addition if they want to go more in depth. We have the other part of it too.
And John, that leads me back to that important part was, you have, we needed to know if we're the first page of questions we have should be, what sports am I in? What sports am I involved in? And or what's my favorite sports? What are my favorite sports? It's like that. And then have a drop down list, and you can choose a bunch of them and you say submit. That way we know 2, 6, 10 sports that they're into. We know that we can come back and ask them, you say you're interested in football, tell me how and what your role is. It gives us things to go back to. But that's what we need, that in that first page. The second page should be proficiency. And I think really it's, that way we can gear whether it's skills and drills, or if it says, the first thing should be, I'm just for fun versus I'm competitive.
Yeah, I mean, so I agree with that. We can, change up the sequence in which you ask the questions, but that doesn't change our need to have these levels defined for each sport.
Correct, but it makes it easier for those.
So even though I ask,
those first.
so even though I ask the sport first,
right,
and then maybe my proficiency, then I'm still going to say, okay, well, you're an athlete, what level?
Yeah, exactly.
But that level is still dependent upon what sport I chose.
Absolutely.
So the conversation we just had about where we need to go with these levels, the relationship to the sport, certainly is different.
Right. Also, if we had a slider, if the athletic level, if we have a slider that starts off in beginner and ends up at pro, and you slide up and down, or just hit a dot and hit someplace on that.
I mean, you can make the level dependent upon both the sport and their proficiency, which complicates it, because then we have to say, if I choose basketball and I'm a pro, my level is only going to be pro or semi-pro, right? But if I say that I played basketball and I'm a novice, my level could be, youth, high school, junior high, high school, college, Olympic, Junior Olympic, something like that. So you're now complicating that ultimate list because it's not just a level based on a sport, it's a level based on the combination of the sport and proficiency level. Okay, so we can do that. What's that?
And whether you care, you could be. I'm a surfer. I just do it because it's really great to do. Right? You don't really is that's like totally separate. I just like doing it. So I'm gonna go surf. So what you really care about then is going to be fun. I'm going to come on the site to watch fails and flops. I'm going to watch people falling into the water or getting eaten by sharks, whatever. But I'm there for that versus being competitive.
In that case, I choose surfing.
Right.
I say I play for fun.
Yep.
I say I'm an amateur.
Right.
No, I don't say I'm an amateur. The next question is, what's my skill level? Beginner or expert,
right?
Or on a sliding scale. And then I'm going to say, well, what level is that? And the level is just recreational.
Yeah. So why would you come to UB Sports?
So that says differently. That's much the level that you offer them is much different than the levels you're going to offer a basketball player.
Who's competitive, right?
Which tells me that we're not going to be able to come up with consensus on a standardized list of like 6 to 8 levels. We really have to focus it specifically on the sport.
I agree with you. Yeah, sure, because some sports are just recreational, but the sports that we care about are the sports where a lot of people play them, but the top people, there's a governing body that where they can win or lose and they can become national champions. That's our definition of a sport. Is a sport that is something that there are winners and losers, that there's a governing body, and that you use your mind to control your hands, which then control something else. Those are our definitions of a sport. So that's how you get chess and esports in there and other stuff, you know? So
surfing, does surfing have a governing body?
They're in the Olympics. Yeah. There's a worldwide surfing federation.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's national federations, and URI and a bunch of other colleges have teams, and they compete individually. So yeah, very much so. But darts, that's obviously going to be played either at a bar or intramurally. I don't think there's a darts. Of course, there are governing bodies, and there's national competitions and worldwide competitions, but most people are just playing at the local bar, right, or down in the basement. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to find out what's going to make these people come the second time, not the first time, because the first time really is just curiosity. Second time is because, hey, they have a lot of fun stuff that I can watch. That's really fun to watch. I'm going there because they have a lot of good stuff that I can learn how to be better at. And then the third, then it gets into the more complicated things, which we're going to bring in the most of our people, because the governing body said, hey, this is a great place to go to learn how to play better. And the governing body is leading, and the governing body could be either the governing body or the college or the high school or the local youth league. They're telling you to learn how to play better.
So it sounds like we need to make a decision about what determines the levels that we ask the person to select from. It's not just the sport. It's the sport and their reason for interest in the sport and their skill level.
Yeah. So
operationally, the aspect that you're going at is not as important at this stage of them getting into us, as getting them more involved in working our website and getting involved in joining us is more important for us at this point now.
So let's look at one sport as an example. If we come up with basketball as the sport that we look at, If I say I play just for fun, ultimately the levels I'm going to offer up for them to choose from are going to be youth recreational, adult recreational, or maybe just recreational. Okay. But if I say that I play basketball competitively, it could be youth recreational, adult recreational, college, high school, Olympic, professional, maybe a few more. So it's not just the sport that drives that list of choices. It's the sport and the reason.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so that doesn't change what we need to do to get the developers to build our system. But it does complicate the decisions we have to make to build those relationships.
Right. The next stage
Because
is
now
very complicated.
I think we can come up with a 7 of all that stuff that we can put 7, 8 of them or 10, whatever it might be. But all the stuff you had down there for levels as our template, that's we start from. That'll get us going from the first stage. But if we want to get more in depth and more, it's going to be more complicated with to get people more involved in there. They have to get more specific with their level. We can always address that at a later date to get them more. As long as they have the standard set up already, they have something, we have something to work off of, as opposed to nothing at all to work off of.
And what if their level changes? They
Yeah.
just make the edit, you know?
We can change that level as we go along, right?
Yeah, okay,
Well, what they do, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
We want them to get better.
right.
Getting them into our website, wanting to come back, enjoy what they're getting, that's a big step right there. More so than us making sure we can just respond back and say, hey, I'm glad you joined us, come on back. We can give you more information, good footage of this field, a football game or a golf tournament, whatever it might be you like. You know, and then if they're serious, more recruiting, want to get more involved in the sport, that's the next stage. Now they're in, they've joined. We can get more in them. These only two, I don't know. I think that way we can, if it's expandable, workable, and they can build the second stage with all those different levels available for us, I think that'll make it easier for us later to do things. Still complicated because, like you said, each sport is different. Certain sports might be more narrowed down, so be more expansive. But that's later. I think that can be done on an as we go basis. Personally, I don't know.
So my next step will be to take the feedback from 3 of you guys. And Greg, if you have some, you can still send me that on the levels, what levels we need. I will take your feedback, incorporate that, and then I will try to consolidate the list a little bit. Like maybe I'll kind of combine pro, semi-pro, right, as one option. Maybe we don't need to distinguish those things, et cetera. So I'll try to consolidate the list to a certain extent, and then you can each review it and provide feedback. And again, we'll go.
And we'll have a meeting, we'll list up that we can go right through, right to the nephew. I know we can know exactly what the answer's gonna be. I suppose of waiting.
I like that.
Yeah, instead of waiting and go back and forth, we build it, look at it, say, John, this we all like, we all talk. So that
Yeah.
you will know exactly what's going on after our meeting. Instead of having you go back and forth all the time and looking at it and changing. We can change it one time altogether. That'll save houses.
How about a text group? Can we just do a text group and then send things by text each other? Because I think what we need is.
Yeah, that's complicated. That's complicated. I don't use a Mac, Greg.
Oh, yeah.
So I can't really take a text with a file attachment and get it to my computer that easily.
I see. Okay. So, okay, email. So we'll just email back and forth.
Oh, jumping
I mean,
on Slack.
we could put it on Slack and use a text message to say, hey, I just put an update.
Okay, that's cool.
Yes.
And we could do that. I don't mind being on a text thread like that, but passing files by text,
Yeah, it doesn't work.
I'd like to avoid that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's do that. Let's just let's go with that and think about the sports that each of us plays, and let's figure out what level we're talking about. But that's, I still want to make sure that we're looking at what's going to make my experience better the next time I go into UB Sports. Two, what does the level mean? Does the level mean how good I am at the sport? Or does it really come down to where I'm playing? Am I playing extracurricular or in school, or adult, recreational, or pro, or Olympic? And I think that's what we have to think about operationally. What's going to make the difference? What differences it makes when we do this, when we say one or the other.
Right. Most of it's basically the feedback we'll give them, right?
Yeah.
What level they're at, but like advertising and marketing wise, we're not going to change too much.
No, they're still going to be wearing the same shoes. They're still going to be playing with the same racket.
Exactly.
So what I
there's
care about really,
there's a significant difference. There will be a difference in the content you serve. You're going to serve different content to someone that plays kind of high school or youth level than you are someone who's who's a recruitable college player.
That's exactly what I'm saying, John, is that what we really care about is that they're a beginner, intermediate, advanced, or elite. And we're going to serve them up and market to them differently as to, we just got new elite level pro or serving advice from Federer. That's going to be something that's going to be totally different from what school you go to. That's not going to make any difference whatsoever. What I care about is I'm an elite player. I'm going to learn a better way how to serve from Federer or Nadal. That's really what I'd be caring about. I wouldn't be caring about, is it a Big East thing or is it a SEC?
Well, I would throw out there, just kind of as devil's advocate. I mean, are you going to show different content and send different kind of emails to a college basketball player who's recruitable versus not recruitable?
I mean, a high school player who's recruitable, or a college, going to pros.
Okay, think about a high school basketball player who's recruitable versus a high school player who's not recruitable, regardless of skill level. Are you going to show them different content when they hit the site?
No.
Are you going to send them different emails?
No, but operationally, I want the coaches who want to recruit that person will be interested in somebody who shows what levels they are and how good they are. And that's when you get into the question about stats. I don't, unless, if I say I'm recruitable, you definitely need to be thinking about stats and putting your videos up and that kind of stuff. And we have to tell them, hey, you got to do this in order to be recruitable.
Okay, but
hey, is it possible, John, is it possible, and Greg, this is a question for you and John, is it possible for content, for us to keep general content consistent despite the age, despite the role, despite the level, but have specific click buttons for, if you're a high school athlete, click here, and then have a whole bunch of content for the high school athlete. If you're a professional, click here. If you are, so that way they can navigate. And then you might have an elementary school or youth player who wants to watch NBA clips. We're not going to deprive them of watching that. Just give them the option to click that content if they really are interested in it. But there are certain things that's universal when it comes to that sport.
Definitely.
Can we do that?
Yeah, definitely. But we have to have we're going to help them guide them a little.
You could. The best experience would be that they don't have to click to find what they want. That if you know that they're this type of person, you serve it up. You don't make them click something to say that they want to see this type of stuff.
Right.
You kind of serve up what you know would meet their needs.
Exactly.
That kind of thing. And remember that a lot of our focus right now has been on the athlete. But if I'm a fan of college basketball and don't give two hoots about professional basketball, I don't want to be seeing professional basketball videos. I want to sign in and I want to see college basketball videos. I want to know what's going on with March Madness, not the NBA Dream Team. So there is a way to kind of deal with that, and that's the real question. Is that's how granular it is. What content are they going to view on the screen when they log in and they click through the site, what kind of stuff are you going to recommend to them? Like when you go to show trending groups for a basketball player, you don't want to show them trending squash groups. You want to show them trending basketball groups, right? So you are going to change the content delivery of what they see based on the information you know about them.
And that'll be
And
linked with
that
the content,
goes to-
correct, John? We'll be
What's that?
linking the video content, say, of the sport to the level and what they want to look at, so that when they click on I'm an intermediate, that link for that video for that particular level will be there available for them. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yeah, let's say for example that you have the New York Nets join and they have a group page for their team and they put up video highlights. Okay, that's professional basketball. But let's say I'm a fan of college basketball. I don't want to see the New York Nets videos. I don't want to be enticed to join the New York Nets group. I want to be enticed to join college team groups and see those videos. And so you can drive the content that they see. Now, there's limits to that, right? And that's based on how granular we get in the level and the sport and their skill level and their interests and all of the questions that they answer. So yes, we can come up with abbreviated list of levels. We can vary them by different sports, and we can vary it based on the sport and the reason why they play. They play competitively or for fun. And the combination of that could drive the level, the videos that we recommend, et cetera.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just go ahead. No, go ahead.
So that's why, in an effort to minimize the data that we're presenting, to simplify this, we'll present an inability to get granular when it comes to the content, the ads, and the email messages that we target to different groups. And if we're okay with that limitation initially, then that's fine. Then that means that it works, and we should be able to come to some consensus. But that's why we have to consider, okay, well, if this is the way we break it down and these are the relationships we build, what are we leaving out? We're not going to be able to target people who play for this reason at this level.
Oh, at this time,
Whether it's,
right? You can always
yeah,
add
at
that.
this time. Right. So that's kind of where we're going. And that's the ultimate goal for this is what do we need to get started with? And frankly, we could have 3 levels, in my mind, and the system would work.
I like
and it
the
would be
4
simple.
Greg mentioned. The
But I don't know that
novice,
gives
intermediate,
us what we
advanced, and elite, right? Those are pretty good. I like that. That covers everybody. It generalizes really, but still, it gets us
Right.
going.
We don't have to get into the roles or anything, but we're gonna know how well a person plays a sport, and then from there we can go.
maybe we get rid of a level. Do we even have to ask if they're pro, college, high school, youth? Do we have to ask that?
No,
Right? Maybe that's irrelevant.
I think next question, right. I think you're absolutely right. The next question we ask is, do you play on a club or a team? And that's going to give us that answer, whether they're a high school, college, or D1,
Right.
D3,
Correct.
by the team they play on. And if they're a club, then we know that they're just, we can gear toward their club experience and how well they play versus getting down to the nitty gritty of, operationally, how's that going to change?
Right. And the next question after that should be, are they recruitable? That'll again, will advance them further into what we know exactly what they want later.
At this point, it's
Okay, so at that
list all the high schools and colleges in the United States. So we can actually say, if it's a high school, drop down. You know, as soon as they put in like BAB, it's going to be Babson College or Babylon High School. You know, it's going to be something B. So we can do that, and that'll allow us to not only find out where they're playing and what level, but also make sure that they're using the right spelling, at least for high schools and colleges. So
That'll get us going nice. I like that.
So I mean, so you're gonna like,
we
I
actually,
mean, that answering whether it's high school or college, you're still identifying what I've been calling the level. So the question is, are the only levels you're going to allow is high school, college, and other?
well, they could
Well,
also.
no, you're going to want to identify that.
So we still need to know.
I mean, I'm going to want to find out if they're a pro or an Olympian
Definitely.
or something totally different, like a youth player or an adult recreational player.
Well, I was like that.
Right. So you're still, regardless of how you ask that question, you're still asking what level they play at.
Sure. We need to know what level they play at. That's a given. That's not even a question.
So the whole conversation that we've been having for the last hour and a half still applies.
Sure.
You still have to find out that these are the levels for certain sports.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not just for each sport, but it's for the combination of every sport and every reason they play. Basketball for fun, basketball competitive, right? Maybe there's another reason I would play. Okay, so then we have to, instead of having like 7 choices of levels for basketball, you actually have 14, because you would have 7 for basketball amateur and maybe 7 others for basketball professional or competitive, I mean, right? So we still have to go through that exercise. And if you interject a different dependency, okay, the level is not just going to be dependent on the sport you play, but it's going to be dependent on the sport and the reason why you play. And then you're going to offer up and say, these are the levels. You know, tell us what level you play at. High school, college, pro, Olympic.
So we're in agreement, though, that the beginning part is still standard. We need to know, that, of course, all the information about them personally, and then what sports they want to play,
Right.
what they like playing. From there, we can talk about levels, because we're going to get more specific. What of it is recreational, not the levels of their talent level.
So none of this has been shared with the developers yet, correct? Because we still haven't figured it out ourselves, or are we past what Bill just said? Are we past the initial profile gathering and now moving on to something different? Are we, has anything been?
The developers are currently have only built a basic profile that asks, like, aside from some personal info, it asks what's your favorite sports, and that's it. So there's nothing to do with the roles, nothing to do with the levels. So it's yet to be defined.
Okay, so the first
And
part,
that's the nature of
the first phase is all set there.
there.
The first phase, the basics phase, is set up. Getting the personal.
Well, I think,
together.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Greg's initial expectation was that we would have some semblance of the roles built into the first phase. But unless we delay the launch of the first phase, I don't think you're going to get this in the first phase.
Yeah, I think that we really, what we need is some kind of listing of what role, another list of roles. Like you're asking up front and on the next 2 pages, at least, when you're building the personal profile, you want to have what sport I'm involved in and what level I play at. And that's the first page. The second page should be where I'm playing. What's my club? Am I playing for a club or for a team? Am I playing individually? Or am I a industry professional? And then the next one is someplace in between 1 and 2. I want to ask, probably the second page, what's my my favorite moment in this sport? As we were asking, we're breaking down sport by sport. In baseball, I play. I'm a pretty good player. I'm an intermediate player. I play on a team. And what's my favorite moment in that sport? And that's a fill-in, of course.
Right.
What about
My
goals?
only comment there is that when they answer the question, what's my favorite moment? That does nothing to drive the rest of the answers to the questions.
Nope.
I want to really keep our focus not on what questions and what sequence we ask them, but the ones that are dependent on each other. So for example, if the level that we ask is dependent on the sport, you can't answer what level am I at without asking the sport first, okay? If the level is dependent on the sport and the reason they play for fun or competitively, then I can't ask the level until I get what sport they play and the reason they play. The favorite moment in sport, you can ask at any point after that sport, but it doesn't do anything to drive those other relationships. So I consider it frankly irrelevant in the context of this conversation.
It totally is.
You can ask it wherever you can ask it wherever you want, but it does not apply to what our objective is in determining these relationships of the data.
What about adding a goal on there? That we know what kind of goal they're going at. Would they give us an idea what they want? At the same time?
Well, put it this way, if it's a free form answer.
Well, I would
It's
drop
not-
down like a doctor's office does. You know, like, what do you want to do? Why are you coming to the gym for? What's your reason why? They give me
Sure.
I want better health, won't lose weight, this and that.
Now,
See,
if that goal is dependent on the sport or the role or the level, then we have to determine those relationships. If it doesn't matter what sport or what level or anything, then the question itself is irrelevant to the conversation.
Right.
I'm really trying to get us to focus on the questions that are going to drive the options they have for the next question. In other words, if the levels are dependent upon what sport I pick, you cannot ask the level first before the sport. You have to ask the sport so that you can limit the choices of levels.
Right. Absolutely. That's exactly why we're asking what sports they play up front. Is so we know the sports. And then yeah, it's either going to be how well I play the sport, but the other part is where I'm playing it and what am I playing in high school, college, intramural, interscholastically, those questions. And then if I'm elite, am I playing it for high school, college, or pro or Olympic? Those are on the outer edge. But in the middle, it's going to be the people who, and I keep coming back to how is that going to change the experience of the person on the side? Are they here to learn, play better? Are they here to watch great big content? Or are they here because their coach told them to join because when's the next workout? When's the next tryout? When's the next competition? So there are reasons why the person is going to be joining and what we need to offer them the next time they come and why they're going to come back. Obviously, they're told to come back by the coach. That's a given. If they're there because they want to learn how to play better, they want to increase their health, or they want to watch great videos, those are really the three main reasons why 90% of the people who come to the site are going to be there. So that experience that we can drive to make them enjoy that more and come back more, and then reach out to them by email, that's really functionally what we care about. And that's what I'm saying, as far as the developers go, what we need to do is really get to those first 5 questions, and one of them being, what sports do you play? And then take it from there. how well you play those sports. So those are my feelings right now is what we need to give the developers.
So the next steps are for me to take the feedback that you guys have currently provided. I'll try to modify the list of levels at this point and consolidate them with some sort of indication as to, you know, this is recommended to be deleted. This is recommended to be added. You know, this is recommended to be changed to a different word or something. Okay. And then I'll share that. All right. And we can review that, discuss it. If we come to immediate consensus, great. I'd be surprised that we do that right away. I think
I think it's a good thing though, we can.
right. I think there'll be a little bit of back and forth. I think there'll be some decisions that are made. One of the things I think that has been missing is Kelly's input from a marketing perspective. Because if we come up with this list of roles or levels, let's say, and she says, well, wait a minute, there is very specific marketing I want to do to, like, you know, high school players in this sport because they spend a lot of money on equipment, right? Then we have to consider that, whether that's valuable or not.
Yeah, she'll be back.
So that's one of the, yeah, so that's one thing that I'm a little concerned about, is that she hasn't had any input in this process yet. But I will come up with a consolidated list with indicators as to the type of feedback that you all have. We can all review that. Maybe we'll come to consensus, maybe we won't. Once we come to consensus, we can apply that list to all the sports that we plan to launch right away and say, does it apply? And someone can identify these are the one-off sports that we need something different for.
Right. That can be done later
That'll
on.
be our process.
Yeah,
And once we get to that,
our phase 2 internally.
Yeah. Right.
and
Okay.
at that point, you know, if there's a sport where our consensus list does not apply, then we can't set that sport up initially. Or we would have to kind of come up with what's that?
Not for recruitment, but what as far as the content goes, if we get an Olympic athlete or a top athlete or somebody who loads the content that a regular member needs for that sport, which is going to be how to play, how to win, how to stay healthy, and watching great videos.
Sure.
Right,
Greg, they can create a group, but if you want someone to sign up and say that sport is my favorite sport and I'm a player or a fan, well, maybe not so much a fan, but that I'm an athlete in that sport also, then you have to define the levels for that new sport. So there is a setup. So for example, Greg, you just can't all of a sudden meet with some, you know, you can't meet with Derek Jeter and have him say, yeah, I'm going to set up my own baseball page. So let's add baseball to your site. And you just can't go in and say, create new sport baseball. You will have to say, create new sport baseball. Here are the levels that members that select baseball as their sport can choose from.
because we want to deliver them ways to become better players. So we're going to skills and drills videos, coaching videos, but everything else stays the same. The rules stay the same. The connections to the governing bodies stay the same. The venues stay the same. The news,
Correct.
the team stats, and the blogs, those all stay the same. But the only thing we can't do is give them specific levels of, well, we can give them specific levels of skills and drills videos as soon as we know what, beginner, intermediate, advanced, elite. We can do that kind of stuff. Really?
Yes, but when a new member, if you go to add the new sport and say, I have a new sport that I want to put on the site for whatever reason, because you got a new agreement with someone to manage that sport or something, right? Like quates, for example, right? Because I told you to add quates. So in the future, you go to add a sport that we haven't dealt with before. So when somebody goes to sign up and says, I'm a player in Quades, the next question at some point, it's going to say, what level do you play?
That should be the second.
Professional, college.
Right.
It doesn't matter. It'll come after the sport at some point. But when you ask that, the system has to be set up to know that these are the levels that correspond to this new sport. So you just can't go in and say, add a new sport, done. You have to say, add a new sport, and then check the boxes for the different levels that are available for that sport.
Well, I'm going back to my original premise is that whichever we're finding niches where they play, the college, recreational, competitive, intercollegiate, intramural. But the bottom line is, I'm there, number one, to learn how to play better. Number two, to stay injury free, might not be number two. Number three is going to be watching cool videos. Four is going to be forming a group with my buds so that we can keep track of when we're going to be practicing next. But other than that, the niches of where exactly they play isn't relevant for their experience. Again, back to that story. That only becomes relevant when they're talking, their college coach says, join this site, because all of us are going to be coordinating our activities because of.
So if I sign up and I pick this new sport that you just created and said, I'm a player,
Right.
You don't want to ask me at what level I play?
Yeah, well, I'm going to ask him what level I play at. I'm going to ask him, am I beginner, intermediate, advanced, or elite?
Okay, so your skill level, but
Right.
I'm talking about, so if you want to create the sport, you're going to create the sport in the database, but you don't define these levels like professional, college, etc. If you don't define that, do you want us to not ask that question for that sport?
No, I'm not. What I'm saying is that isn't necessary for our first two levels of personal profile development, because the first two levels are who am I, where I play, what sports I play, and how well I play those sports. The second question is, why am I here? Am I here to learn how to play better? Am I here to watch great video?
But you're never going to ask them what level they play at.
That's a different question. Where I play and who I'm playing with is what you're asking.
No. I'm talking about the level. Do I play professionally, or do I play for college, or am I an Olympic player? These levels that we've been talking about.
Right.
So when you go to set up a new sport and a new member comes up and fills out their profile and says, this is my sport, at some point, among all those other things you ask them, you're going to say, what level do you play at? Professional, college, high school, adult, recreational, whatever we choose, right?
Mm-hmm.
For that sport. So when you go to create the sport in the system for the very first time,
Right.
you have to define those levels. You have to say, yes, use the standard template, or use this custom set of levels.
I think that's right. I think it's important for us to find that out. But again, I'm asking you operationally, how does that change their experience on the site? What are we going to do differently for them if they're a height or?
You're not gonna ask a professional if they're recruitable.
Yeah, exactly. Of course.
You're not necessarily going to ask a youth or like junior high school if they're recruitable. You're not necessarily going to ask an adult recreational player if they're recruitable. So that's an example where it
they're all along.
varies.
What did you say, Bill?
Said, just leave it, are you recruitable on all of them? They're gonna say
Exactly.
yes or no on their
They
own.
gotta say, yeah, they're gonna say yes or no. Then if they're not, they'll say no. If
Yes or
they are,
no.
they'll say yes. But we shouldn't assume or try to make it more complicated for us on the front end by eliminating it.
Yeah.
I knew a kid that made it all the way up to NFL football from Pop Warner. He wanted to play NFL football. He was recruitable all the way through his life. He wanted to go to a special high school. He wanted to go to a particular college. He wanted to go. He got on top for professional. So let them decide what they want, not us. Should all be there, let available for them to do it. Just say nope. Okay, next.
Yeah, I met a woman who's a curler, and there's no way you can get to the Olympics unless you're in a club and you start winning things in regional and national. You're elite, but it's sort of still ad hoc. It's a small sport, and are you recruitable? Well, yeah, because I land my stone on the right spot down the ice. But it's not like
Okay.
any kind of organized system.
Maybe asking if they're recruitable or not was a bad example. I thought it would be a clear-cut example of where you would ask some people that question and others not. Okay, so maybe that doesn't particularly apply. But if you display the "Are you recruitable?" question for someone who clearly is not going to be recruitable,
Yeah,
you're asking them to fill out.
Yeah,
You're displaying an extra question that they have to click or not click on and hit submit to get to the next question. So you're lengthening, complicating their experience in filling out their profile. So the idea is, if you say that based on this level, that you don't display such and such questions.
right. They say I'm
Whether it's a
recreational.
Google
Let me see that question.
Right. If someone says I'm in it just for fun versus someone who plays competitively, the videos you recommend them to watch may be different.
Right. We're still giving them the ability to go to skills and drills videos, but they're really there to have fun. They're going to watch the fails and flops and the competition.
Right. So that's where knowing the level is going to be valuable, and that's how it makes the site different, and that's what makes that level important to a certain degree. Because if you can't distinguish that level that someone is in, it may change the way you're doing things.
Oh, it's definitely
You may
something
not.
No, I think the question isn't whether we need to know it or should know it. It's just a matter of when we find it out and how they allow themselves to get pigeonholed into who they really are. Do we need all that information in the first question or the first page they see from us? No, they need that 2 or 3 down the road. But right now, we want to know just what they play, how well they play it, and what they're there for. They're for fun, because they're competitive, or they're there, because they really are serious in their, they want to get.
Correct. But that doesn't change the need for us to go through this exercise, because at some point down the road,
Right.
You're going to ask that question.
Absolutely.
What level do you play at?
Right. Right now,
it seems as though
developers though.
And it seems as though the answer to that question is going to make things be a little different depending on your level. The things we recommend you watch or do are going to be, or buy, are going to be a little bit different. So the question does become important. So the exercise in defining what levels do you display for each sport is still very relevant.
I absolutely agree with you. We need to go through this definition. It is really important. What I think we need to do is get the first couple of pages done for the developers immediately. I don't think that includes this other stuff we're talking about. I think what we need to do is say how well you play and what your goals are for being here for this within this sport. I'm here to learn how to play better, stay healthy, or have fun while I'm here on the site. And that's what the developers need to know right now. And in order to not delay that opening, these are the questions we need. where we go with each one of the individual sports and what levels are available to them to further define them is, that's phase two. Still, before we're going to get that information to them before the launch, but the launch is what sports I play, how will I play them, and then that one little button, I'm an industry professional, because that also helps our apps. So we need to have that thing up front also. But I think that's really what we need for the developers to start working on the site, the profile development stuff, and also then for the apps, for the AT app, for the trainer app, and for the UB Sports app, we need to know those other professional concepts.
And the recruiting question.
And
right?
recruiting, yeah. And if they say they're recreational, then we don't have to worry about the recruiting question.
Well, if that's what we want in the first phase, then why are we even worrying about the level right at this point?
That's what I'm saying.
Why don't we focus?
Is that we need to define these things and have them laid out before the launch, but we don't need this to give to the developers so we can get the launch on time. We really. Oh, Daniel, would you agree or disagree?
I agree. I mean, I'm just thinking about the timeline based on the launch, and by us, spending weeks after weeks after weeks trying to figure out a consensus for all of us to, agree upon. I'm just, whatever makes it easier for us to get it initially out there so we can work on more investors contributing, so we can have a product to show people, so we could increase our membership, get advertisements. That is going to be the real, test of everything. But we need a product. And I think we're just, I wouldn't say dragging our feet. We're working on things, but we need to prioritize what's necessary for that launch. And if it's not detailed in terms of the levels, then we're wasting too much time on it. We need to put together what needs to be relevant, what we really need, and then take it from there. So that's just my thing.
Should we table the whole concept of like the level at which somebody is involved for now and focus on redoing based on these key questions?
I think so.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Greg?
What's that, Greg?
What level they play and what they're trying to get out of the site. What's going to make them come back? That's really what I care.
You mean the skill level? The skill level.
The level, right? And what sports they play, and then yeah, exactly. And then what they're going to come for? Are they going to come to learn? Are they going to learn how to come there to have fun, or they're going to come there for health? And that's really the three main drivers of why an individual is going to come to the site. And then as we build a community and we have other people who they're friends with, and they say, they start getting together, or they say, hey, my team should be involved in this, or my club should be involved in this. That's when we start getting to these operational questions and why it's important for us to know if they're on a club or a team or a league or that kind of stuff, so we can help them drive their friends onto the site.
Do you think, Greg, on the first page or somewhere on after the beginning part of this whole profile and everything, recruitable, not recruitable, even though we're not done with the other part, just have it on that page?
I don't think there's a problem with asking that question.
Right?
I think it's great because, like you said earlier, Greg, we want those numbers to be high. So we enticing college coaches to subscribe for maybe $1,000, $2,000 to us. We're offering different things for them, incentives to stay on our site because we're sharing the information with potential recruiters. So we need to know that number. And if our numbers are low, then we need to some sort of way, a marketing plan to target athletes who are recruitable, because we need to build this app.
Yeah.
So the earlier we know, the sooner we know, the better.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so let me ask this, because I'm kind of a novice at this kind of stuff. If somebody says that they're recruitable, how do you know if they want to be recruited by a college football or basketball team, or a professional college or basketball team, or the Olympic basketball team for that matter?
I think that's down the line.
Yeah.
I think once we get the initial information, but we know they're recruitable, that's something we can go back and ask. at a later time, once our recruiting app is available. It could even be part of the recruiting app. Hey, you said you were recruitable. Here's our app. Go back in and fill out all the necessary information we're going to need to help you find that right fit.
Right. Well, it's the athletes who are recruitable aren't going to get an app themselves. They're going to be answering that third and fourth and fifth level of profile development on UB Sports itself. But the fact that they're answering stats questions and other information that really is only relevant to them in terms of getting recruited or showing off to their friends is that puts them in a different category. It also gives the coaches and us knowledge that these are people who are interested in getting recruited.
I mean, basketball is a perfect example because it's one of the few major sports, where you can be a high school student and get recruited directly into the pros.
Right. Baseball team.
As well as hockey, but like football, you can't really do that. Okay, so if you say I'm recruitable, how does a recruiter for basketball, how does the college recruiter or the pro recruiter know that this is an athlete that I can recruit?
Well, I guess Daniel.
And I don't know enough about the process. I don't know, but
Daniel probably answered better than I can about the basketball part, but I do know that when you're building your resume, so to speak, for a particular sport that you want to be recruitable for, whether it's for college level or pro level, they're going to still ask pretty much the same kind of questions. It's going to be, and so you're building their profile similar for either one of them. They're going to mention which they want to do, or talk to an ambassador in that particular sport and say, I want to get more into college or pros. And in that case, like a pro scout who's joined on UB Sports will look at that high school profile saying recruitable. His whole list is all stats right there. Oh, I know what he can do, whether it be from college or from high school, because their college is looking for the same kind of stats too. If they want to take them. If I'm wrong, I don't know.
No, I agree. And I also think that if say we identify 2,500 basketball athletes who say they are recruitable, we could take that information and send that information to all the colleges and say, hey, listen, on our UB Sports website, we have over 2,500 athletes who are recruitable in the sport of basketball. That alone is what a recruiter wants to hear. One-stop shop. I could go to one place and find out information on 25 recruitable basketball athletes. You know what I mean? So that's how we get the coaches to come to the site or get the app, because now we know exactly our number of recruitable athletes that we have for each sport. We could do that for baseball. We could do that for soccer. We could do that for all the sports. But not knowing who is recruitable is not going to help us. We can't say we have 50,000 profiles of athletes, basketball athletes. No, we don't know out of the 50,000 how many of them are actually recruitable. But if we know that number based on what checkbox, now we could go to the colleges and say, hey, we have 2,500 recruitable basketball athletes at our site. Get this app. It costs $2,500. Get the app. Any recruiting coordinator would love that opportunity to recruit one-stop shop and get access to all these players who are potential recruits.
okay, so
I don't know who we talk.
I sign up and I subscribe and I pay you your $2,500 so I can use the recruiting app. And I do a search. It says, show me all the recruitable basketball players, and the 2,500 players come back in the list. How do I know that I can recruit them? Like if I'm a college recruiter, but that athlete is a college player who's recruitable for the pros, how do I filter that out?
That's the question. Not all
Like
college players are recruitable. Not all college players want to go to the pros. So or do you mean a high school player that wants to go to the pros?
I think the questions that you're going to ask somebody who's recruitable in general are going to be basically the same. how high I jump, what's my standing reach, what's my arm length, how fast I run, and it could be some, bench press, leg press, those kind of things, and also my stats as a guard, as a forward, as a center, and
Yeah.
right, they're all going to be the same no matter if I get recruited. I'm still going to have the same stats.
And it's the same thing for the recruiter. Say there is 2,500 recruitable athletes in basketball on our site or in our app. A coach might only be looking for a guard. There might only be 50 guards. So you still have to do due diligence to find out if that person is the right fit based on their interest, their position, their level of play, their interest either to stay home or go away, depending on where your college is. So there's still legwork that the recruiter has to do, but to find 25 names and then break it down, it's just like going to an AU tournament in the summer. We go and we watch 100 games, but we're just looking for 1 or 2 players for the next season. So they know that there's more work that they would have to do, but just that one-stop shop and going to quote unquote an event or a place where you can find all these kids and then decipher and sift through what you want. They know they have to do that anyway, John. You know what I mean?
Okay, so I'm a recruiter. I sign in and I say, let me see all the recruitable basketball players. And I get a list of 2,500 kids. And then I say, well, I'm looking only for a guard. So now I'm down to 500 players. And I say, I need a guard who's a shooting guard.
Correct.
Okay, so I look at whatever stats define a shooting guard. And now I have 1 kid, right? Or maybe 5 kids, 5 recruitable players, okay? And I email them through the site or whatever. I communicate to those 5 players because now I want to recruit them to come play for Michigan, okay? And they all come back and say, well, I'm a senior in college. I'm recruitable. I want to be recruited into the pros.
Okay.
Cross them off.
That happens.
Like
that happens.
We haven't addressed that scenario. I mean, you're not getting
But
it
that
by
happens.
just asking it.
Can you guys hear me? Because can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
That happens.
Yeah.
And that happens with recruiting phone calls. When we get a list of say 10 guards that we like or we think fit what we're looking for, we then have to place that call and get that information from the player. They may want to stay closer to home. They may want to go straight into the pros from high school. They may want to, for a variety of reasons, you may not get all 10 to be interested in you, but that's something you still have to investigate. So from what I'm trying to say is it's not unlike coaches to do their investigation based on a limited number of recruits.
Right.
It's not foreign for us to have to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. That would be just fine.
Is there I'm just curious, I don't know, is there like a group or some kind of group that says that this is the recruitable groups or recruiting agents, something like that, or association or something like that? I don't know. We have to go to individual colleges and have them recruit that way, or we have like a major one central first place we can send it all the information to? I'm just curious.
I mean, those are the recruiting apps that we were talking about. There are different ones that are being developed and that are already exist to make it easier for college coaches to find potential recruits. And now with COVID, I
was meaning more like us sending out information saying, hey, we have 2,500 recruits for you guys.
Yes, yeah,
like,
that's what we're talking about.
Or is it just we have to go to each individual place? Say we have.
That's what we were talking about earlier with the Blue Book.
Oh,
we were talking about the Blue Book.
Yeah, okay, I remember now.
Yeah, but I'm sure that there is something online.
I know what my next steps are. It was to consolidate that list of levels and things, but it sounds like that's not really where we want to go. So
my question is, when we are ready, is it going to be another phase for the developers? Is it going to cost more to add that, or is it just going to be open, but just not ready for the launch?
Well, it will probably cost a little bit more because you're going to have to build part of the data model for this profile stuff, and then you're going to have to change it to support the new stuff. And then the biggest complication is not so much the development side of it, but it's converting and migrating all of the existing users into that new model and getting them to answer the new questions.
Got it.
That's where the biggest challenge comes in, but it's not, it's not undoable. It can definitely be done. So it does complicate it.
Okay.
It's obviously better if you define it up front, and as people start signing up, you have those relationships in place in the database now. But if we can't define it and you want to get something out there, that's kind of the impact of that decision. So we do what we need to do. If we kind of set aside the idea of levels because of the complexity of it, then I would think that my focus needs to be on redesigning the flows based on, excuse me, the questions and things that we need to get in this first phase.
Yeah.
If we're
Okay,
eliminating
I agree.
things.
I
Right,
definitely agree.
So I'm not going to go back and deal with those levels at this point.
Okay, good.
I'm going to revisit the diagrams. And I mean, in my mind, those diagrams are going to basically be pretty simple. It's going to first say, what's your sport? Then it's going to say, what's your role? And
And
then
then why do you play? Why do you?
whether
Skill
they're
level.
different screens or same screen is somewhat irrelevant. So it's going to be sport, your skill level, or your role first, sport, then role, then skill level. Because you're not going to ask a coach a skill level or a fitness trainer a skill level, right?
Right.
So, so I think it's sport, your role, your skill level, your recruitable, you're a professional. And then there's going to be some additional questions which are irrelevant to the relationship of those. And how you sprinkle them in and the sequence in which you ask them is inconsequential at this point. I'm not going to focus on those additional questions where people say, what's your favorite moment in sport? So I'm going to redo some new diagrams based on that model, because I think that's what we need now, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Right. That way you
I
can
agree.
still launch on time and get people, get the flow of people coming in, hopefully going to our site back and forth and returning to our site, which is very important. Right, Greg, that's what you're trying to go to get them to come and come back.
There's a second bite at this apple. I want people to come back because we got them interested in they found that the site was either delivered the right information to them, or they found it was fun.
Right.
And and then we give them more content, more information, more reasons to come back as we go along. But you're right, John. We definitely need to know if they're an industry pro in either in that sport or in general. But I don't think it's. I'm trying to figure out, like, what would you do then if we're an athletic trainer or a yoga class trainer? You're going to say, we're in what context do we ask them that question? My role is as a professional in the industry, in the sports industry. Does it have to be by sport, or is that something that you ask on top of here are the sports that I love? I'm an industry professional.
This kind of lends itself into a few of the questions I asked like a couple of weeks ago, where I thought that we needed to know what their role was first. Because if they're a fitness trainer, because they teach yoga on weekends, you need to know that, because that's not a sport.
Yeah.
So if the first thing I ask if I ask them first, what sport do you play? I have to have both sports and
Activity.
your wellness disciplines.
Well, what I would do, John, is I would say have a list of the sports, but before you hit that drop down, so that it drops down, you would have on the side, or beneath that rather, I'm a sports industry professional, or a sports wellness health industry professional. So that I click that, and that's when you go to those other 7 roles that we're talking about, or 10 roles now. But if I'm going to my favorite sports, that's totally separate from what I do.
But what that means is that you really are asking the role first before the sport or the discipline. Even if you're not asking like which of the 11, you're at least saying, are you one of these 3 roles or are you one of these 7 roles? That's what you're asking first.
Well, what I'm saying is that you have one place where it says, what's your favorite sport? And none of that you say, I'm an industry professional. And you're asking the 2 questions. You're going to choose what I'm here to do. I'm here to be into a sport, which is baseball, or I'm here because I want to fulfill my industrial requirements. I have to find a player for my college team. So there are 2 different, where I want to be a fitness trainer. I'm looking to fill up my yoga class.
So your list of sports, I'm going to list baseball, basketball, strength and conditioning, yoga, Pilates, and hockey. Right? I mean, that's going to be your list of sports.
Right. If you're a person there who is interested in yoga, you're going to find that among those sports and activities.
Okay. So even the label will sound like sports and activity or whatever. Like it'll clarify that. You won't just call it a sport, but that's what you're going to pick. And then if I pick yoga, the only role, I mean, then you're going to restrict the roles to a sport. Like if I pick yoga, you're only going to say, well, I'm a participant or I'm a fitness trainer or wellness trainer, whatever you call it.
What else would, that's it. Some
Right.
very narrow like that.
You would do it before that though. But Greg, I think you're saying, if I'm saying you're wrong, you come up with that sports or activities button with the breakdown window. Right next to it, there's another button saying,
I'm an industry pro.
I'm an industry pro. You click that button, you don't have to go through all different roles of a sports or an activities person. You're not going to say I'm no longer a participant in yoga, because you're saying you're an industry professional. So you're going to talk about your being some kind of instructor in a particular field.
And you're going to need our app. The whole idea is we're going to find out who needs our app, right? And we're building an industry pro trainer app and an athletic trainer app. Those are very specific. You know, those are not what we don't need a drop down to tell them what sports for those things. So we need you're exactly right, Bill. We need just a button underneath that says I'm an industry pro.
Right.
Okay, well, is a fitness trainer someone who teaches yoga considered an industry pro?
Yeah, they're making money by it. A lot of them, that's their livings.
On various sports.
LA Fitness has yoga trainers, and that's what they do. That's how they make their money.
Okay. So I'm going to get, when I first come, I'm going to get a list of sports and activities and stuff. And I'm going to see abbreviated. I'm going to see basketball, baseball, hockey, strength and conditioning, Pilates, CrossFit, yoga. And I'm going to pick one of those.
If I'm a participant, right?
Correct.
Well, what if you're a trainer? What are you going to pick?
If
you're a yoga
instructor, is the next question down.
There's one next to it in the industry profession. It's not going to be the sport; it'll be the industry profession.
Okay, so visually on the page, what you're saying is that they should be answering whether they're an industry pro first.
Yeah, that's choice, right?
If you sports activities or industry pro, one of the two.
And if they click I'm an industry pro first, I'm still going to see the same list of sports and activities. I'm still going to see baseball, football, hockey, yoga, CrossFit, Pilates.
If I'm an athletic trainer, I won't see it. If I'm a athletic director, I'm not going to see it. If I'm a facilities manager, I'm not going to see that.
You're not. Most
But you don't know
industrial
what they, but you haven't yet asked them that question.
Yeah, you did. And what do you, industry pro?
But an industry pro is an athletic trainer, an athletic director, and a yoga instructor.
Right.
So I am going to see all of those
Well, you
choices.
need
It's
to-
not going to vary between them.
The whole point is that your need for being on the site is totally different from if you're a participant in the sport. Because if you're a participant in the sport, then that's what you care about. I want to learn how to play better. I want to stay healthier, or I want to enjoy being on the site and watching sports videos. And if I'm
Okay, I get that. But
right,
yeah, but that doesn't resolve the question about the industry pro.
no, the
If I
industry
say I'm in,
for operational purpose. Industry pro is there because they want
Yeah,
to manage their class. They want to
but think of it
business.
as being the user signing up.
Right.
The user is signing up, and
Uh-huh.
you're saying, here's a list of sports and activities. And here's a little checkbox over here that says you're an industry pro.
Right.
What does the yoga instructor do first? Do they pick yoga from the list first? Or do they click the button first that says I'm an industry pro?
If they click yoga, why wouldn't we ask them that question? Since we know it's a health activity and they might be a yoga trainer, why wouldn't we give them a chance to click yoga from the list of activities, and then in that question say I teach yoga classes, and we could do that with all those health activities where that might happen, or have it on single activity.
But to answer your question, that means you just asked them what role they play.
Twice.
That they're either, you just asked them, are you an athlete participant or are you an instructor?
Right.
That's what you're distinguishing.
Right. Exactly. We have to, right? But if we get them to think, if it's just a person who's playing, it's going to be 90 or 95% of the people on the site, they're going to be there to enjoy themselves and learn more about their sport and watch sports. So
I have to go in like 5 minutes.
yeah, me too.
If I come to the page and I have a list of sports and activities in a drop-down list,
Yep. Okay.
I have a checkbox that says I'm an industry professional.
Right.
Okay. What does the person who goes to yoga classes to do yoga do? And what does the yoga instructor do? Do they pick yoga first and then check or not check the box that they're a professional?
They can get there either way. That what I'm saying is that the stuff that they can easily click I'm an industry pro and then say I'm a yoga instructor, because we asked that question. I'm an athletic trainer, or I'm a fitness trainer. And under the
So if they don't
be those segments: yoga, Pilates, TRX, meditation, those kind of things. Those would be a different set of activities that you have specific to the stuff that we're going to cater to with our fitness trainer app, right? And so that's a different set of questions. And yes, there's yoga there, but you also need to have that question. If I click yoga up top, I'm a yoga participant, right? I participate in yoga, and then in that thing you say, are you a trainer in yoga? So there's no reason why we can't ask that in both places, and then give them the opportunity to join or subscribe to the fitness trainer app for yoga. There's no reason why they can't just get there with both questions or both workflows.
I was under the impression that we were still going to proceed with gathering information and those data points. However, we were just going to either eliminate or postpone the question of levels. I didn't think we were going to take away all of that information gathering and just simply ask, those questions initially. Does that make sense?
That's what I thought too. And,
That's
and
what I
we're-
thought.
what I'm trying to get across is that the way, Greg, that you're describing it is that we still are asking what their role is.
Yes.
Right.
Which I
So
thought we were still doing.
there's
Yeah.
this relationship between the sport and their role. So we're still going to have to define that and come up with like what I call the experience, which is if I come to fill out my profile and I pick yoga because I'm a yoga participant, I pick yoga, I don't check the box, and then I get another drop down that says, oh, are you a fan or are you a participant or whatever? So you're still asking the role. So if I'm the instructor, I'm hitting yoga first, and then the checkbox that I'm a professional. And maybe that defines my role as being a fitness trainer because I'm a professional and you can only have one kind of professional in our roles, right? So maybe, but that means that we're still defining the role for that member.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought we were doing, John. I thought the only thing we were postponing was the level, and until we had a better idea of what we wanted to ask. But all the other data points and roles and relationships, those I thought we were still going to try to gather initially.
I don't think there's a reason not to. I think that it's just a matter of what we need in that. What I'm just talking about is that first 2 pages of profile development. When we first get there, and then as we clarify who we are and where we are and what level we're at. I think that's, and who we are is the role. But I think that the first thing we have to do is just get data points that we can use then to make their experience on the site better. And from then on, it's a matter of how we get them to act operationally on the site or our apps. Does that make sense? I mean, what I'm thinking about is why they're there and why we're going to get them back. And we need to know either, is it just for their enjoyment, to help their health, to help their capabilities, or is it there because we're going to help their capabilities professionally? And then professionally, okay, how are we going to help them be a better facilities administrator, a better yoga instructor, a better coach, better recruiter?
Why can't we have both? Why can't we have that questioning along with more detailed information on roles?
Exactly right. That's why you need that click button that says, I'm an industry professional, to take us to that question list.
So what if you're, okay, and a fan, industry, because a fan falls under that too, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. They're a fan. They're there to enjoy the sport.
Right. Okay.
Well, a fan is never going to be an industry professional.
Right. But the thing, are you here just for, well, I guess you're right. Yeah. You don't need to know that.
I mean, an industry professional is never going to be a parent.
Right. Exactly.
Well, I mean, they could be, but not for the purposes of what we're doing right now.
Yeah. So I say both, John. I say the same. In terms for the developers, is my point. We send them the information we did complete with all the roles and the relationships. However, we table the levels. We don't need that right now. Let's scratch that whole part out.
Right,
And
but
then-
Yeah, I agree.
right, I agree, and I'm trying to get a picture, because what I want to do is go back to the diagrams and the flow charts on how a user goes through completing their profile.
without the level being asked, you're saying, correct?
Correct. And what I'm hearing is that we're going to ask them like their sport or activity and whether they're a professional or not. But I'm also hearing that we kind of want to do it the other way. You want to ask them if they're a professional.
In sports, just in general. Sport, you're right. So as I'm saying, on either when you go into the first page, there's that button that's going to allow you then to know that you should be asking them what role they play professionally. And then we can start narrowing down what they're doing, where they're doing it. If I click, what are my favorite sports, then I'm basically saying I'm doing it because these are my favorite sports. And oh yeah, by the way, the thing you clicked was yoga, and I'm also an industry pro in that. So I don't see a reason why we can't ask that question both on the front end, on the first question, on the first page, and then the second page when you open up, I'm into baseball. There's no reason why I couldn't have that question there again. I'm a pro. I'm an industry pro in this sport or activity. It's not hurting us to ask it twice.
I'm gonna say baseball. I'm gonna pick baseball. I'm gonna say I'm a professional. Then I'm gonna page that says, tell me, you're gonna make me pick baseball again.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's really relevant for the actual sports. I think for more of the fitness activities, we need to have that second question, because if you're into meditation, you're going to think of that, as opposed to being a coach where you're a pro and coach.
Okay, so your fitness trainer is going to come into the site. They're going to pick yoga. They're going to say, I'm a professional. They're going to get a next question, which is going to say,
where's your studio?
Right.
Where are you a professional?
Because you have now, by the fact that they said they're a professional for yoga, you have determined their role as being a fitness trainer.
Yep.
Okay. So
the
point is that you have now defined role.
Yeah.
Already.
On a professional level, as opposed to a participant level.
And they probably are both. And that's the whole thing. These people who do these fitness activities really do that themselves. I mean, because first of all, they're working out while they're doing it. Here, let's do this yoga pose, and the person up front's doing the yoga pose, right? So they're in effect working out at the same time. TRX, the person's doing the TRX at the same time that their students are doing it. So in essence, they are working out and they are participating in it, as opposed to a coach going like, okay, guys, 2 laps. And it's really different.
I'm going to try to build out the flow chart.
Okay.
And, in the ideal situation, I'll come up with a flow chart that has no circular loops.
Yeah, exactly. That's good. Well, under circular loops, you're just diverging and converging on the app that they need to get, or the service that we can give them. Does that make better sense? We're trying to get them to use something that we have to offer. So if it's a fitness trainer app, they're going to get to a point where they go, oh, I can set up my yoga studio on the UBsports trainer app. Or
and my point is that you're still essentially having either you predefine it because of their answers that they gave you, or you're going to make the user select something as far as their role. So you still need to know their role. Somewhere
sports agnostic, right? Some are sports agnostic, like a facilities administrator. It really, right? And athletic director, there's going to be 30 sports under you. But if I am a yoga instructor, I've narrowed it down to being into yoga. So that's a good idea. We should definitely try to figure out in these roles, these 11 roles that we've picked out, what sports qualify, or what activities or sports qualify under each of those roles. Because this would be generic.
I'd like to see, you mentioned facility manager. I don't know how facility manager fits in, because if I manage a couple of gyms for some little league wrestling teams, I'm not really a professional. I would never choose to pick that. So I pick wrestling as my sport.
That's the point.
Right. So it's
if I'm rec center if I'm the student rec center facilitator or manager for Iona College, they're managing that facility that has 15 different areas: basketball courts, racquetball courts, yoga studio, hot yoga studio, aerobics area, and gym, the weights. So in that case, it's totally separate from, and it's not agnostic, but it's multiple areas. But each of those areas is sort of agnostic, because what I really care about is scheduling it and getting people to join and be there for that time frame. But as opposed to, I have to teach somebody how to do yoga. So I think it's important for us to know what roles and then what sports are under those roles. And obviously, if I'm a player and I'm doing it for recreation, that's going to be all sports.
Yeah, see, that's why the first pass through it was that the role was most important first, because the role really drove everything else. Like if you're a facility manager, you say you're a facility manager, and then you don't even have to tell us what sport.
Right, you're an industry pro, and that's why that question has to be up front. Industry pro, like what's my favorite sports, or I'm an industry professional, and that takes us away from that question of what sport we're pigeonholing ourselves in.
Right.
Yeah, but a facility manager for Little League, they're not an industry pro. They're not going to answer that question. They're not going to check that box.
So how do they get paid?
They don't get paid.
Okay, so they're not. So
that maybe
They
that's not
just-
their
they-
primary
they
They're
just
not
role.
industry pro.
They
Maybe
just do
they're
the
not an industry-
scheduling of the gymnasiums for a few Little League wrestling teams. They're not a professional. They don't get paid to do it. They do it because they like to be involved in the local youth athletic association.
those are usually paid positions, though. That's what I'm saying, is that those are usually paid positions.
Okay.
At very least, it's a work study position at Stony Brook. But even then, you're there because you're trying to organize and coordinate those facilities.
Okay. I'll redo some flows. I'll get them back to you guys, and we'll have to walk through the sequence
And if we're staying with our,
for each type of role that we have,
right.
to see if it fits and if it works.
Okay, if we're staying with our 11 roles, let's try to take each role and then name what sports go under them. It could be all sports, or it could be like no sports, or specific.
Well, so, but that means that you have to ask the role first. You have to know the role first before the sport gets answered.
Category of role. Category is I'm a player or participant, or I'm doing it because I'm instructing, or I'm a professional. I'm doing it professionally, not because I'm participating. That's, I think, that's really how you have to there are two segments of population that we're talking to.
Yeah. Without the sport, like athletic director, something like that. If you have a sport, you have to have the sport first before you tell the role, because the role is what role you play in that sport.
Right.
But if you're an athletic director, you're covering multiple sports and everything else. You don't have a set sport. So now what's your role? Well, I'm an athletic director. You don't have to answer the sport. I'm being an industrial professional. I'm becoming an athletic director, and I want to know how to be best to become an athletic director. You don't need the sport to have a role, because your role is covering all the sports. But if you're looking at it,
we're gonna
That's-
end up having.
And that's why I think we ended up with the role as the top level question, was tell us your role, and whether you broke it down as being professional and non-professional first. The idea was you wanted to define the role. So even if you said, I'm a pro, I'm a non-pro, you would then get the question, okay, well, if you're a professional, are you the athletic director, a facility manager, et cetera? If you're a non-pro, are you an athlete, a fan, or a parent? Okay, so that the role was really driving it, because you wanted to show certain sports based on the role. But we can flip it around and see how it works. I mean, maybe that's the way we come to the decision as to what's going to be right.
And I thought we were going to eliminate the word industry, the word professional, when we were talking about industry professionals, because we didn't want professional players to think.
Yeah, I don't. Yes, and maybe I don't.
Or
I don't want to get involved in what terminology we use now, as long as we all understand what we're talking about. When it comes time to present that question to the user of the site, maybe you don't just say industry professional, maybe you say, you know, I'm an industry professional or a trainer or instructor or whatever.
I changed it when on the very first document that we were doing, when we were trying to list the roles in general. I changed industry professional to whatever it was, but it wasn't industry professional. Remember, Greg?
Yeah. I do
But
remember.
when we
Oh,
first,
I forgot.
when we first when we were first trying to figure out the number of roles we needed, we came up with the 11. I thought industry professional was the wrong one to use because I didn't want professional players to think that they fall under that. I don't remember what I changed it to, but I think we were all on the same page that we weren't going to use industry professionals for ADs, as presidents, commissioners, things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, like John said, though, it's not that important at this point. As long as we know it's not.
Yes, agreed. I just want to make clear that we all thought,
Okay. I've got my work cut out for me. You guys, it'll take me a little while to go through it, maybe tomorrow or the next morning or something, but
Sure.
I'll get back to you with kind of a revised flow, and then it's just a matter of seeing how it works. But I think every time we walk through and step through this, I keep coming back to the fact that the role is really what you're defining first. But I will try to flip the diagrams around to get rid of level and to be asking the sport question first.
And for me, I don't, it's chicken or the egg for me. So that's why I haven't been too involved with that part of the conversation. I think it's either or. I don't really think, this is my professional opinion, I don't really see the difference in which should come first, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm not too married either. I understand that they're important, but as long as the flow goes the right place you want to go to, it's fine.
Yeah, there's no reason why they can't be side by side and ask that same thing. Break it out up front and then ask the same question later on. If they say one of those sports where you can do that, like yoga, you can also be an instructor versus working out in the same sport. Okay. So let's figure that out. Let's take the roles and try to break down which sports and activities match each one of the roles and figure out if we can get there that way versus the other way. That'll also help us figure out how that flow should be.
Yeah, I think the 11 roles are still on the document you sent us, right, John?
Yes.
And it's up there on Slack as well, so we can find it.
I still have, okay. As I meant, we still have the original you did. Oh, we did. Okay.
All right.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
You sure?
Bye.
Everybody, it was a great meeting. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.